Hey, yo, say hello to the bad guy, Scott Hall. And you're listening to WGD Weekly. Brother.
All right, we are back from a week's vacation. Hey there, all you savages. Welcome back to Wrestling's Glory Days podcast, WGD Weekly with Steven the Scum. My name is Steven. With me, by my side, everybody's favorite Yogi, the Scum.
Well, Steve, I'm not quite sure how to respond to that introduction. Yogi is in like the bear. If that were the case, I think I'd prefer to be called Ted or maybe formerly Theodore. But either way on that, it's always a pleasure to be back here on WGD Weekly with you, my longtime tag team partner. Always a pleasure to be working with the top-notch act that the boys over at Wrestling's Glory Days on Facebook. Be sure and check them out. And it's a pleasure to be back here after a week break with a very special edition. We have two, count them, not one, but two full-length interviews. One that we had from a few weeks back, and one that we actually conducted right in the man's home office after a workout at his house the other day. That's right, the return of the three-time WCW World Champion, the King of Bada Bing, Diamond Dallas Page, comes back for two full-length interviews, people. So don't click off after the first one. It's dynamite, and so is the second one. We have an additional 45 minutes with the King of Bada Bing that we can't wait to bring to you.
Yeah, man, it's going to be awesome. And, you know, we're sitting here talking in our studio, and I find it interesting, Scum, is that we've had Diamond Dallas Page on our show before. And again, now this is kind of uncharted waters for us. Each week when we interview our guests, you know, the first time we had him on, it was kind of an inopportune time for him, and it ended up being kind of a 45-minute long infomercial for DDP Yoga. And he was kind enough to, you know, say, well, you know what, guys, you were patient with me. Let's reschedule, and I'll give you a little bit more time. And, man, he did not disappoint. This interview that you're going to hear, the first one that we recorded, like the Scum said, just a few weeks prior, is awesome. It just runs the gamut of just his career and, you know, what you expect, you know, what you've come to expect from Steven the Scum. And that's a good old-fashioned timeline. And Diamond Dallas Page is not afraid to tell a story.
Absolutely not. Very emotional interview that we're going to be bringing to you. It touches on a lot of points throughout his career. As Steve said, one of the best to date with one of the highest profile performers given his recent resurgence, let's say, across the internet with the DDP Yoga and the different things. So Dallas definitely, as Steve said, does not disappoint. And then again, in the second part, he doesn't disappoint again. He goes in different directions. It was pretty much just throw the recorder down and Steve, the Scum, and DDP, you know, chatting over some lunch. And I think you're really going to enjoy it. I know I really did. And like Steve said, and like Diamond might say when he was flashing them pearly whites in his WWF days, that's not a bad thing. That, my friends, is a good thing.
Yeah, man. It was a really entertaining experience. And you guys are probably like, what? You were at the accountability crib? Well, yes, we were. And it was a really, really special weekend for us. And we got to meet not only Diamond Dallas Page, but a few other high-profile wrestling figures, or at least one high-profile wrestling personality and another professional athlete whom, you know, if you're a baseball fan, you're going to know. But we're going to get into that after the interview with Diamond Dallas Page. He was actually at Full Sail University, I think, when we took this. No, that was the first one. He was on the road for this, and you'll hear him in this interview say that we caught him at the right time, and he was absolutely right, man. This guy does not disappoint. For the next 45, 50 minutes or so, Scum. Sit back and relax and enjoy a great part one interview in this show of Diamond Dallas Page. It's all about DDP this week, man.
Absolutely. Before we get in too deep here, a couple of thank yous to throw out for the great experience that we had. Obviously, Dallas Page, thank you for being so generous and inviting us into your home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Spending the whole morning and into the afternoon with us. Thank you to Dallas's daughter, Brittany, who helped arrange for us and made sure that all loose ends were tied up because obviously he's a busy man was very instrumental in allowing Steve and I to come down and experience this. And as well, thank you to Megan, who works with Dallas in the office, does his bookings and things like that, for always helping us with getting Dallas on the show and also pitching in and making sure that we could do this. And like Steve said, we not only had the opportunity to shoot the breeze with Dallas for a bit, but again, on a personal level, one of my favorite performers of all times happened to be in the house and, walk through with us. And we had the unique opportunity to share some moments with him. Wish we could have had him for an interview as well, but we'll get in deeper with that as we go on in the show as to who that was and how that came to be. And also, like Steve was saying, there was also being a couple of sports fans outside of the world of wrestling. Pretty cool to see another professional athlete that we were very familiar with in there rehabbing and taking advantage of the DDP yoga program. But we're going to get a move on here because we got an awful lot of Dallas Page material, and honestly, who wants to listen to me or listen to Steve when you can listen to the 3-time world champion, baby?
That's pretty much all we got to say, folks. We're going to get to DDP's timeline interview right after this.
Hey, this is Jake Steak Roberts. You listen to WGD Wrestling Weekly, man, with Steve and the Scum.
All right, everybody, we are back. Scum Nation, thanks once again for joining us here at WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum. It's that time. Once again, every week, we have DDP with us, Diamond Dallas Page, DDP Yoga Master, former 3-time world champion, Diamond Dallas Page. Thanks so much for joining us. Last time we talked about DDP Yoga quite a bit. This time we wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about your career. Take us back to working with the fabulous Freebirds, what it was like in the AWA days working with P.S. Hayes, Terry Gordy, and Buddy Jack Roberts. Talk to us a little bit about the fabulous Freebirds.
No, it started with me being in the AWA, and I was doing their first pay-per-view, their first and only pay-per-view that the AWA ever did, and Michael P.S. Hayes was on that loop. He was actually wrestling singles then, and for a time before him and Jimmy Jam got together, and we hooked up on a road trip with Jerry Jarrett driving. I don't know how the fuck I ended up in Jerry Jarrett's car, but he was always been very nice to me. And Eddie Marlin, and that was a booker, and me and Hayes was in the back, and Hayes was smoking like a fiend back then. And he was saying how Jerry Jarrett hates fucking smoke, and I guess he didn't treat him too good when he was early on in the business because he kept blowing smoke at him and talking real loud and being obnoxious. And me and him just bonded big time. I was a big, big partier back then. And, back then I drank I could drink with anyone. And you had to be of that grade to hang with any of the Freebirds, because those fuckers could drink like they were, on the way to the gas chamber. And at the end of that 3.5-hour trip, Hayes liked me. And he's like, you aren't one of those guys who's trying to get involved in wrestling to be a TV star. You actually love it. And we exchanged numbers, and Hayes was a huge star. I was no one. And he would call me back when I'd call him. And when you think of that, looking back and who he was, that was a pretty big deal. Dusty Rhodes actually did that with me too, but it was under totally different circumstances, where I went and worked in Florida Championship Wrestling, actually became friends with Dream, and he would actually return my phone calls, mainly because his wife, Michelle, said, Dusty, don't forget to call Dallas back. So that's how I got those phone calls. But Hayes would actually return my phone calls too. And when Dream finally brought me into WCW after he had left the polka dot gimmick behind in WWF, he brought me in to manage the Freebirds. And like I said, I had a real relationship with Michael. And Michael said to Jimmy, this kid's got some great chops. Let's let him do all the talking. And they actually started with their backs to the camera. And I got to be the guy who was speaking for the Freebirds. So that in and of itself was a monster, confidence thing for me. And of course, I nailed it. And if I did, I'd have been screwed, But I did, and I would travel with those guys for the next few months. And Gene was he really liked me. He'd bring me into booking meetings, Dusty would. I thought, because he loved my ideas, he'd ask me, I'd tell him. I didn't know that was getting me blistering heat, but, I just went with it because I didn't know, and he loved my energy, and he loved that I fucking just say what the fuck I felt. And, Freebirds, being on the road with them, my right knee's always been really bad, and I hit my car when I was 12. It hit my right knee. My face bounced off the hood, and to tell you how fast that car was going, I flew 42 feet from the point of impact. Oh. So that'll give you a little idea of what hit my right knee. And after a while, I'd have to straighten it out. I just couldn't sit in the back. And I hated to sit caddy corner, so occasionally, I'd stick my foot through that rest, the armrest in the Cadillac. And they'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm just stretching my leg, and everybody, we're treated like equals, but I was not the equal looking back of Jimmy Jam or fucking PS. And they'd fuck with me, and then all of a sudden, my foot is in flames because Jimmy fucking lit my foot on fire. Those guys liked the cocktail, and again, so did I, but I'm not a pot smoker. But they were. I don't know if they still are, but they sure as hell were back then. And I would never smoke. So they'd blow smoke at me or whatever. And then one night I was like, fuck it, give me that joint. And I started smoking pot with these crazy bastards. Well, they would learn who the real crazy bastard was when all of a sudden, I don't know what the fuck I saw, but I grabbed the wheel, Michael, and I pulled the fucking wheel, doing 70 miles an hour, across, 3 lanes of traffic. And he turned white as a ghost, and Jimmy's screaming, and they were like, what the fuck are you doing? And I was like, whoa, dude, I thought I saw whatever. And they were like, no more pot for you. No more pot for you. I was like, no shit. I told you I don't smoke this shit. Now, that's my two Freebird story.
Sure, that is great. Adding to the legend of the Freebirds. And
oh, my God.
Well, that's certainly some great stuff. And ironically, you would talk about not knowing exactly how the hell you wind up in that car with Jerry Jarrett, or being in that spot in the car with Michael P.S. Hayes and Jimmy Jam Garvin, grabbing at, or let's say jumping behind the wheel, to lead us nicely into our next question. At WrestleMania 6 in the Sky Dome in Toronto, you wind up working a spot for the WWF where you drove Rhythm and Blues, Greg the Hammer Valentine, and the Honky Tonk Man to the ring for their match in that pink Cadillac. I gotta ask, how exactly does that spot come about?
Now, what everyone has to understand about my career, I tried wrestling when I was a kid. It didn't work out for me, but I had that in my blood. So it was already there. And I knew in my soul that when I stopped, I only wrestled 3 times. It was in 1978. And then I hurt my knee, and I should say injured. I didn't hurt it. I injured it where I couldn't do shit for a while. And I got my first job running nightclubs. It wasn't a nightclub. It was a friggin', gin mill with a friggin', band on one end and a bar on the wall, and you could fit 150 people, friggin' nuts to butts in the place. But I was already in the bar business since I was 17, and now I'm 22 or 23. I think 22. Might have been 23. I can't remember. All I know is it was all about the booze, the broads, and the party because I was fucking everything and having a blast. And, you know, years went by. I went to Texas. I came back. I ran a place in, down in Asbury Park, Point Pleasant. I mean, not Point Pleasant, but Asbury Park, New Jersey. And wrestling started to take off in the 80s. And I was so pissed that I didn't pay my dues because I knew I would have been a part of the whole Hogan, Piper, Jake Roberts. I'd have been a part of that. And obviously, I wasn't crazy. It just wasn't my time yet. So I had this club in Fort Myers, Florida. And if you worked in Tampa, which the WWE did in the 80s, and you worked in Miami, which they did, you would work Miami one night and Fort Myers, I should say Tampa the next. And to get to those locations, you would have to come across to Alligator Alley down in Naples, drive up through Fort Myers, and then drive another 135 miles to get to Tampa. So the layover spot was Fort Myers. And the boys would find their ways, they found their way to the club. And the first one I remember coming through was Jake. And I remember going, oh, my God. Someone goes, Jake the Steak Roberts is here. I was like, get the fuck out of here. Because Jake was the guy who really pulled. Jesse Ventura, as the color commentator, is the one who pulled me back into wrestling. And then the guy that I thought was the fucking greatest wrestler ever and the realest fucker out there, because I didn't know if Jake was the baddest motherfucker alive or not. Because he was so real. And he became like my guy. And now he's in my club. So I walked over to him, introduced myself. His drinks are on me. Now, I'm his new best friend. So occasionally when he comes through, he come by. Next thing you know, Ted DiBiase's in the club with some hot hunter. Next thing you know, the Bushwhackers are in the club. And Luke and I became buddies. And Luke is a great guy. This is all before I'm ever the wrestler in the AWA. So now I'm doing the wrestling thing in the AWA. And Luke, who's become a buddy of mine that comes through because he lives in Tampa, so he comes through and, and I take care of him. He's just a good guy. And he loved the way I ran a nightclub. He would later hook me up. Matter of fact, it was right around that time, or it was before that time, I think. Yeah, no, it was later. He would end up hooking me up with his friend to go to run or help open a new nightclub in New Zealand. And he got to the WrestleMania was coming up, and Pat Patterson was looking for a car for Rhythm and Blues. And Luke said to Pat, you should give Diamond Dallas Page a call. I'm writing something right now on the air. Let me stop. My buddy's trying to call me. He's got a 62 pink Cadillac convertible. So I'm thinking this is going to be my way into the WWF. And Pat Patterson called me. And I'm not going to get the friggin' door. Sorry, guys. I've got all these damn distractions. Pat Patterson gave me a call and said, hey, Dallas, here you got a 62 pink Cadillac, blah, 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 mint condition. We want it for Mania. What does it cost for us to use the car? I said, if you let me drive it, nothing. Because I was just looking for the relationship and to come in. He said, consider it done. Where can we pick it up? So they flew me up there, And that's how I got the car, got the gig, not me. And I end up, obviously going up there and meeting a lot more people who already knew me, because some of the guys knew me from the AWA, Management Bad Company, but also they knew me from the club. And I remember Hulk walked up to me, and he just started talking to me. He talked to me about, what I was doing, and, he liked my shtick. He was basically feeling me out to see if I worked. And, later on, that was 1980. Was that what year was that? 90 or 89?
I believe 90.
90, right? Yeah, 90. It was before I'd gone to WCW. And I thought it was 89, but it might have been 90. I don't remember. The years were all blurred together through there. But when Hogan came in 94, and we were in Germany doing the loop that we did with everybody. Because when Hulk came in, all of a sudden now we could get booked over in Europe and draw. Because Hulk by himself could draw. So I'm working with Jim Duggan, the jerker match, first every night. I walk through the curtain after my match, and Hulk grabs me by the arm and he pulls me over. And he says, "How are you getting so much better?" And I said, "Wow, Hulk, thanks." I go, "How do you even know?" He goes, "I've been watching your match the last couple of nights." I'm thinking, "You're watching my matches?" And he said, he goes, "This is what they're doing." He goes, "I don't hardly ever see you on TV, but once in a while." He said, "This is what they're doing with you, right? They're letting you learn your craft on the road like this." I go, "Hulk, the only reason I'm on this road trip to Germany, because my last real name is, my guy's texting me to find out what room I'm in. I said, my last real name is Falkenberg, and the Krauts love their Germans. I said, that's the only reason I'm on this card. That, and I got a smoking hot wife that walks me to the room. Walks me to the room. Walks me to the ring. I'm writing my room number if my buddy could come up and see me right now. He's taking me to this event tonight. So I said, because I got a smoking hot wife, walks me to the ring. And he goes, "Well, how are you doing it then? How are you getting so much better?" And I said, I go to the power plant. He was like, "What's the power plant?" It's sort of like what the WEPC was, or is now. The new WWE Performance Center. It was the early editions of what that is. And we had at that time we had 2 or 3 rings or something. And, Paul Levesque, Triple H, he was down there with me. So Paul knew what the power plant was, and he took it and made it an NFL, type of combine. Paul took it to, where it should have been. And the bottom line is, I told Hulk, I figured out the more that I train people down there, because, wrestling's a lot like playing the guitar. If you wrestle, if you play the guitar once in a while, you can learn a song or two, but you never really get any good. And if you only work when they book you, when you're in the beginning of wrestling, well, then you don't ever really get any good because you're not wrestling enough. So, long story short, I figured out I go down there every day I'm not wrestling. And what I figured out is the more I trained people, the more I learned, the better I got. And Hulk, he really didn't understand it because he came from a different generation where you went from one territory to another. And he said, well, whatever it is you're doing, you need to keep doing it. Because it's not this year or next year or the year after. He said, but if you keep doing what you're doing, somewhere down the line, you and I could draw huge money together. And then he walked away. And that initial conversation started at WrestleMania when I was Diamond Dallas Page chauffeur. So now I'm Dallas Page curtain jerker. Now let's fast forward from 1994, 4 years. And all I did after he said that to me was manifest that into a reality. You know what the words manifest mean?
Sure.
What does it mean?
To manifest into a reality would mean to, work on it to make that a reality.
In your mind. That's where it starts. Every amazing idea, every invention, thought starts with a thought, becomes a dream. And then you start to try to make that dream a reality. And it just doesn't happen by thinking about it. You have to work at it. The bottom line is 4 years later, and I did that for people who are listening, because manifest is not a common word. 1998, which is 4 years later, Hogan is on the Tonight Show with Dennis Rodman after Rodman just won their fifth or sixth or whatever it was world championship. And me and Malone walk out with diamond cutter T-shirts with chairs, throw them on the stage at the Tonight Show, and throw up the diamond cutter signs and go face to face with Malone and Hogan. If you want to talk about manifesting a dream into a reality, that's at a whole different level. We weren't shooting my first angle with Hogan on the wrestling show. We were shooting it on the Tonight Show, which was really the world stage, especially in our country.
Yeah, in the sport of professional wrestling, being on the Tonight Show and having that type of a spot is rarefied air. You can look back to the days of David Letterman's show with Jerry the King Lawler and Andy Kaufman, that great spot there. But we wanted to talk to you, DDP, about another guy that was an absolute legend in the ring, and that's the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Both you and he shared a tremendous work ethic. So tell us what it was like working with the Macho Man, both in and out of the ring.
Well, it has to start with the NWO angle, because Randy and I had talked for years. Randy liked me. He thought I had too many gimmicks, though, and that used to make me laugh, considering I don't think anybody had more gimmicks than Randy. I might have at one time, but I'm not sure, when I really look back at it, if there's anybody else who had more gimmicks than Randy, except for maybe me. And he was concerned that I started to lose the gimmick. So, and it was Eric Bischoff who made me do that, and that's kudos to him. Because I really didn't want to lose the cigar. There's certain things that are about my personality that were me, and I didn't want to lose them. But what I found in the big picture, the leaner I got, as opposed to being 270, 260, 250, the leaner I got, the more over I got, and the more I acted like myself, as opposed to trying to be this bigger than like wrestling persona, the more I got over. So, that being said, Bishop was right. And it started with the whole NWO angle, which started, the whole NWO period angle started in my garage with me and Bishop drinking Coors Lights. It would culminate into me coming up with the idea, because no one came up with ideas for me, especially the first 5 years of my career. I came up with every single one. Some of them were okay. Some of them were horrible. Some of them were fucking amazing. And the NWO angle was the best one of all. And since I had a real relationship with Scott and Kevin, everybody knows, not everybody, most wrestling fans know that, I created all of Scott Hall's gimmick from where he was as Big Scott Hall to what would become the Diamond Stud, which would become internationally famous as Razor Ramon. And Scott tells everybody that from the toothpick on out. All those ideas were mine. And he took them and made them his own and took them to a different level. But a real relationship with him. His wife was, what's really interesting today because of what I'm doing today, when Scott called me and asked me to help him, being Freebirds fans, he said, You know, you look like Andre the Giant managing those Freebirds. You know, you wouldn't look so big and out of place if you had someone who was 6'6" and 295 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal. You know, and that's where we started talking about it. The main reason that he came up with it and really came to me was because his wife was pregnant with Cody. So when you think about where Scott and I are today and what's happening with Cody and how he's gotten more exposure off my DDP TV channel than anywhere, and it's really amazing and crazy 24 years later. But back then, I had a real relationship with Scott. And, you know, he came and thanked me for everything before he left to go to WWF. And he went. I remember that day he came and thanked Dusty as well because he was leaving. And Kevin Nash and I, everybody knows about everybody. A lot of people know that we tag teamed together. And Kevin almost quit wrestling numerous times, especially when we were working together because they had cut his money big time. It was costing him money to wrestle at that time. And they'd already tried Master Blaster and Oz, and now he was doing Vinny Vegas. But he had Mr. X. I mean, he had a bunch of different gimmicks. And he was like 4 years in, a 6'10", you know, close to 300-pounder, and he wasn't getting over. But it wasn't his fault. Because as soon as they let Kevin Nash be Kevin Nash, that motherfucker got over like Rover. But again, he was going to quit. And I would be like, bro, do not fucking even think that way. Fuck these guys. Do not let them get in your head. You're going to be one of the biggest stars in the world. I used to say to him all the time. All the time. And he was. You know, but he credits me for keeping him from quitting over that time. Because he might not have quit, but he sure thought about it. And I was right there to talk him out of it. So I had real relationships with both those guys. And I was the one who helped Kevin get brought in. Scott, too, but more Kevin than even Scott. And so that relationship was there. So when all these guys are going to the NWO, you know, I should have been number 3 in my mind, but that's ridiculous in, you know, hindsight because Hogan had to be that guy for it to really mean anything. And then so did Ted need to be the next guy. So it had to look like all WWF guys were coming together. So that's the way it had to go. But now taking my ego out of it and realizing that's the way it had to go, I thought, well, why don't you come to me and ask Diamond Dallas Page to be in it? I tell Kevin this idea. And this all leads up to Savage. And I say, you come to me and you say, Dally, we're ready for you to come in, Scott and I. I'm like, oh, now you want me? Like number 5? Like, fuck you. Without saying, of course, fuck you. You know, I got the best finish on the planet. I don't need you to. Get the fuck out of my face and walk off. And you guys have the attitude of, oh, that's just Dally. He'll get over it. And you come at me again, and I go, no. And finally you come at me again, and I put the shirt on, hug you, hit Scott with the friggin' cutter, take off through the crowd. He's like, I love it. I want to take the cutter, too. I'm like, are you fucking smoking crack? You fucking Bischoff ain't. He might like Scott, but I don't know if he will or not. I said, but he sure is fucking letting you take it too. You know, so you know, you backdrop you over the top rope or something. You know, he goes, no, I want to take it. I go, he's never going to let that happen. He goes, go tell Bischoff. I love that idea. I said, no, dude. I said, I got to tell Scott first. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, I got to tell Scott. I'm not going to tell. Oh, Scott, here's an idea I came up with. You take the diamond cutter. I'm going to ask him first. He goes, are you serious? He goes, what, you don't think he remembers when his old lady was pregnant with Cody and you got him a job and created his whole look? You don't think he's wanting to pay you back? I was like, well, I still got to ask him. So he goes, your call. He goes, but I'm telling you, he's going to do it. So I go and ask Scotty. He goes, I love it. That's awesome. He goes, Kevin should take it too. He said, but Bischoff will never allow that. He goes, go tell him. I go, I'm not telling him this idea. It's got to come from you. Because me and Bischoff were too close. And that helped me in the way of this. He protected me. when motherfuckers tried to backstab me, which happened all the time. He'd go, because they were saying, oh, Dallas, he's out of control. He's telling Benoit how to interview and blah, 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 blah. I was trying to help Chris. Chris is not the greatest talker. I was trying to help Chris, and I loved Chris, and I would do anything for him. But guys would go behind my back and say I was fucking Chris's head up and blah, 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 blah. And he's having Disco talk to him about psychology, and Disco really did have amazing psychology. And it was just me talking as a one buddy to another. That was it. But guys would try to screw my head. He'd be like, no, Bischoff go, he's just trying to help him. You know, and then I remember Bischoff one time and drinking beers in my garage and goes, H, you have to stop being so honest, and you got to stop friggin' trying to help people. I'm like, are you fucking seriously listening to what you just said to me? And he's like, because it causes him a headache, you know? And I'm like, so you're telling me I got to stop being so honest and stop trying to help people? I go, fuck that. I don't give a shit who's trying to bury me. I'll fight my own way out. So I was always on the defense in WCW, and I mean always. And even when I got over big, I still protected my back, even though I didn't have to protect it as much, but I still always did. You know, I always did, never looked at everything like it was. If everyone said it was right, I still went, okay, what's wrong with this? You know, to make sure. And you guys caught me in a roll because I'm fucking exhausted right now. So, yeah, I know. Great for you. I'm just making sure I don't say anything that piss anybody off. The bottom line is that let me get where I was at. Don't say anything. I'll figure it out. Where the fuck was I? Okay, so Bischoff, Hogan. Oh, yeah. So we go for drinks. Me, Kev, Scott, and I think Pac was with us. And Scott tells Bischoff the idea. Now, you got to remember, at that time, nobody has dropped these guys. There's like 6 guys at the time. There's 5 guys, I think, 5 guys at the time. I'd be number 6 or something like that. And no one's dropped Kev or Scott. They have just been running roughshod. It was like, I don't know, maybe close to a year maybe before they were touched, you think? Is that how you remember it?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
They killed everyone. So now I'm going to be the guy to drop them. And Bischoff goes, I don't know. And Scott Hall says, you know, we all know you're friends with Dally. He goes, so are we. He goes, if being your friend is not an advantage, he goes, I'm not sure if I want to work here anymore. Something like that. It wasn't an exact quote, but it was something like that. And I just looked at him like, wow, that was strong. You know, I always say, a lot of people say it's about who you know or who knows you. I believe it's who's willing to say they know you, who's willing to put their name on the line for you. And that's what Scott and Kev were doing for me that night. You know? And that meant the world to me. And Bischoff was like, okay, we'll do it. So he brings it to the booking committee. And they decided to do it. They put it on TV for Charlotte, North Carolina. And it's on the TV. It's going to happen at the 9 o'clock hour. And right before the show starts, the booker pulls me over with Bischoff and says, you know, this is going to be really big. This is going to be huge for your career. But Piper's coming in tonight. And he's got 50 bagpipes. And he's got this and he's got that. And he's like, your shit is going to get lost. And we don't want that to happen. We want this to be the highlight of the night. I think we should do it next week. I was like, sure, that's cool. 9 weeks later, it still hasn't happened. Now, it got put on the schedule and got taken off for one reason or another. Now, I know for a fucking fact that the booking committee don't want to see me drop these two guys. They don't want to. They might want to see someone else drop them, but they don't want to see me drop them because, whoa, that could really get that motherfucker over. And he is best friends with Bischoff. So it gets pulled week after week. Now, I don't give a fuck what happens in my career. I will find the positive out of it. And towards the end of this, I wasn't finding it. But the reality was, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now, it might not have been 10 weeks, but it might. I know it was no less than 8. Every week it got pulled off. I remember fucking the Giant, Big Show, because we rode all the time. He goes, Dallas, it's not going to happen. You're going to need to go to New York if you're ever going to get over. He goes, they ain't going to happen to you here. And whatever that night was, the next night we were in New Orleans, and that's when it got on the paper. And now it's supposed to happen. I had 12 minutes. And by the time I went on the cart, because it was the New Orleans Superdome, and it was so big in that arena, you had to take golf carts, get from one spot to the other. By the time I got in the cart at 12 minutes, got out of the cart, it was 10. Started stretching out, it was 8. Started looking for Kevin Scott, it was 6. They're playing my music, it's 4. I was so fucking pissed off because they were diluting what the fuck we were going to do. And I was cracking hard. And Kev, I call him, they're fucking cunts, they did this to this, da-da-da-da-da. He goes, Dally, what do you always tell me? I said, I don't know, what the fuck do I always tell you? He goes, breathe. He goes, dude, it's going to take us 4 minutes to get to the ring. You seen that ramp? He goes, get the hell out there, beat him, have fun. This is your night. And I went out there with Mark Starr, who was a really good hand, really good worker in the ring. And a minute later, I was doing a bank shot diamond cutter, and Mark hit that turnbuckle, and I hit the ropes ready to bounce off and hit him with that cutter. And about 3 steps in, he dives face first towards the mat. And I'm literally thinking, what the fuck is he doing? I don't know what he's even doing. So I dive at him, catch him, maybe 1.5 feet off the mat, and hit him with a cutter, and the place explodes. Now, they don't know that's a fucked up spot. No, I want to catch him and pull him to the mat. But he dove, so I caught him. And if you watch me on the very best of Nitro, roll him over, look at my face. I'm insanely pissed. I get the 3 count, raise my hands. I'm so mad I'm doing the old 10 because I'm still, I haven't used to doing the diamond cutter yet. Even though I'm getting it over like a motherfucker, I'm still not used to doing it. Because what I realized, if I throw it out the diamond cutter, I'd bring it down right away. And the people didn't have time to put the sign up. So when I finally got a hold of it, I would throw it up and hold it for 3, 2, 1. Then I'd do the bang. That's where I gave everybody a chance to throw it up with me. And I didn't do it that night until the end of it. Until Scott and Kev came in, and when I hit Scott with that diamond cutter, that roof exploded. So now I'm on a rocket. And Randy pulls me over to the side. He says, it's time. I want to work with you. I'm going to set this up. We're going to work together. I was like, wow. Randy Savage just told me we're going to work a program. Holy shit. Now let's digress. 3 months before this, I went to show up at Longhorn Saloon. I go, I got something to tell you. He goes, what is it? I said, you're not going to like it. He goes, what did you do? I said, Kimberly's been in a bunch of those Playboys, the blonde Vanessa redhead. She's been in like 3 different satellite issues. He goes, yeah, I know that. I said, well, they asked us to shoot in Playboy centerfold, celebrity centerfolds, or Playboy celebrity nudes. He goes, what? He goes, you shot naked? I go, no, not me. I go, they brought us in to do a shoot, because Kimberly's pseudo-celebrity now because of the show. I go, the show's hot. I said, they wanted her to come in and do the shot. They wanted me to do it with her. I originally shot, a bunch of shots of me in wrestling gear, and it's like me tying up my boots and her just about to get into the outfit. And then they loved the shoot so much, they asked us to come back, and our 2 pages became 6. He goes, what? He goes, you got a morality clause. He goes, you could get fired for this. I go, well, did I get fired for this? I go, maybe Vince will do something with the angle. So it went from me getting fired to Randy and Liv exposing the picture of Kimberly on her hands and knees and spray painting NWO over her crack of her ass and her nipples. And that's where that angle comes from. So from me maybe getting fired, to launching my career, and you got to take shit into your own hands, especially in entertainment world, because you can't expect anybody to do shit for you. You have to make shit happen, and that's what I did. And it could, sometimes you lose, sometimes you get fired when you do shit like that. Other times you become a big star. And the first time Randy ever hit me, well, we'd worked a couple times. The first time was with that, when he hit me with the spray bottle that he'd spray painted Kimberly with. And Kevin and Scott had the music. I don't know if I beat somebody. I don't remember if I beat somebody or went out there for an interview, or I think I beat somebody. And then they played Scott and Kev's music, and they came out. And as I'm facing off for them, Savage came from behind and hit me with the gimmick and knocked me out. Now, I know that I'm going to just lay there. I've never taken the elbow off the top rope from anybody, because that's Randy's move. And like anything, I think he's going to protect me because he's jumping off the top rope on me. Anyone who says wrestling is fake and they're like one of those assholes, we all know who those kind of people are, they need to lay there. Just lay there and let Randy Savage drop an elbow on them. Because they will think someone just dropped a friggin' tractor trailer on them. When Savage landed on my rib cage, on the right side of my rib cage, I thought he blew out the left side of my rib cage. And I mean, like, blew out, like the guts all over. It hurt so fucking much. I was mind boggled how much it hurt. And I knew he was coming again. And he hit me again with it. And, man, it was like, so you want to be in the big time? Guess what? Shit gets real sometimes out there. And that was, the beginning of it. And it would go on for a long time. I'll never forget the Friday before the pay-per-view, Spring Stampede. It was the day before my birthday, I think. 1 or 2 days before my birthday. My 41st birthday. And Randy, it was a Friday night, and we were in Florida, South Carolina. And we were putting on our boots. And Arn Anderson, who was the agent, walked in and said, so Randy, what do you want to do tonight? Because it's not like he said to me, so DDP, what do you want to do tonight? No one said what the finish was when it came to Randy Savage's match. Maybe when him and Hulk were out there was some discussion. But besides that, whatever Randy said went. And every night that we had worked together coming up to that pay-per-view, which wasn't a lot of nights, they kept us apart a lot. But the times we did work, there was a schmoz at the end of the night. And I got pummeled by everyone in the NWO. Of course, at the end, I'd take that elbow again. And on this night, when Arn said, "So what do you want to do tonight?" He said, "Well, I think I want to take the diamond cutter tonight." And just went back to tying his boots up. And we went out there. We tore it down. It was a small building. Only back then we were selling out like crazy. And it was like, I think it was a hockey arena, so it might have held like 11,000. There had to be 13,000 in there because you could barely breathe. There were so many people in there. And it was white hot. We didn't have to do shit. And the people were popping on everything. I mean, I couldn't have been any hotter than I was right then. All I needed was for what was about to happen to happen. And we went into that match. We tore it down. He got a shitload of heat on me. I fought back. The people were with me like if you were to paint a story of how you would want it to happen, they were so in Savage, as over as he was, babyface and heel, he could have easily been a babyface heel, but not Randy. He knew as a heel you draw way more money than being a babyface heel. And that motherfucker went for real heat. And he kept me down and made me fight my way up and kept me down. And then I finally blew a tiny comeback. The people were coming like crazy. And he stopped me, and he went to slam me, and I turned it into a diamond cutter, and the roof blew off. He's laying on his back. I'm laying on my stomach. I crawl over and roll my hand on top of him, laying my face in the mat, and the entire place chanted 1, 2, 3, and then it was like there was dead silence for like an instant, because I don't think people could really believe that I just beat Randy Savage. And then it was one of the top 3 loudest screams of people screaming and yelling and cheering that I ever heard. And then it was like someone put a cone of silence that lowered on top of us. And I could hear Randy as clear as we were talking, and there was nobody else. But it was crazy, noisy, loud. And I could hear Savage going, "Well, I guess we got the finish for Spring Stampede." That was, an amazing. I mean, it was just, it made my career. Not that night, but at Spring Stampede. And Randy knew that.
Wow, yeah, absolutely, man. I can say for one, I remember watching when you hit those diamond cutters on Savage and on Hall, and I would totally agree that the pop from the crowd on those two especially, I mean, it was insane how loud those places got when you hit that thing. I can't even imagine being in your shoes when a legend like Randy Savage says he wants to take your finish, take the diamond cutter, give you the win there at Spring Stampede. I mean, that's unbelievable. What an honor. You used the term skyrocket there, and man, that's exactly what your career did at that point. I mean, the whole company and your show, Nitro, at that time suddenly became real mainstream. It was all of a sudden cool, let's say, to watch WCW and to watch wrestling as a whole. You had celebrities coming in. Like you said, you were on The Tonight Show with Malone. You would become the guy that it seemed that WCW would go with when these type celebrities would come in. So I was hoping you could share with us next what it was like not only working with Karl Malone, but with Jay Leno, and then a bit later on with David Arquette as they each came into the company. I mean, being that you were the star that they would seem to team them up with, as Malone and Leno were both at your side when you worked those programs opposite Hulk Hogan. What was it like working with each of these celebrities?
I'll tell you that one second. I got to touch on this. I read a lot of what people write on YouTube, because obviously my DDP TV videos, which there's hundreds of them, we get a shitload of views. And we get a lot of people write a lot of comments. And then I also read when some people take like something I said on an interview and then they pop it out there on Wrestling Inc. or whatever. And I don't remember what the article was, but you get those jerk-offs who go online who think they know the fucking business, or maybe they're younger. I don't even know who the fuck they are, but there's certain people who just don't like me for whatever reason, no matter who I help, what I do. It doesn't matter. And I get that because not everybody's going to like it, and that's just the way life is. And normally when they write stupid shit, I fucking really laugh. I mean, I really do. I go, boy, you are so fucking wrong. And you're a retard. And I really, none of their comments, no matter how fucking rude some of it can be, I find, entertaining. That they're they make themselves look like a fucking retard to the person who actually knows. But I seen one guy who wrote something like, DDP's real run, when he was really over, was toward the end when the company was dead. Thinking, really? You retard, I'm going to fucking write something for. And I wrote about a paragraph or so. I wish I would have copied it, so I just could have copied and pasted whenever I see a retard comment like that. I'm thinking, let me see about that. 96, we were going back and forth. Vince would win, we would win. He'd win 2, Vince would win 2. We went back and forth. In 97 and 98, we won 89 weeks in a row. Oh, that's when I was on top of the fucking world in every other fucking main event there was. Oh, really? Well, maybe you should go back and look at the history, and watch. So that fucking jerk off I just fucking wrote. This is what happened over my run. And the most over I ever was 97. 98 was fucking amazing for me. But 97, I was fucking right there with Stone Cold. We were right there. And then Steve got the amazing push, which he deserved. Because to me, I of all my buddies who I love to watch, I love to watch him the most. And it was a huge honor for me in Pro Wrestling Illustrated when Steve was rated number 1 wrestler in the world, and I was rated number 4, both 97 and 98. Years we crushed WWF to a certain degree. And I don't really think I was number 4 wrestler in the world. I think Steve was number 1. But, I was top 10, between both companies. Easily top 10. So it was a fucking great time for me. It was an amazing run. And getting to work with Malone and Rodman, again, that was my idea. Because no one's going to put me in that spot. So trust me, it was my idea. No matter how hot I was. I'll tell you how that went down. I did a lot of autograph signings back then. And one time in Houston, they asked me to stay over 2 days because, I was just crazy slammed. And that night before, or after the first night, they said, do you want to go to the Houston Rocket game? And I was a baller my whole life. And I was friggin' honorable mention All-American, junior college. I wasn't fucking the man, but I was pretty fucking good for a fucking 6'4" white guy who couldn't jump. All that well. But I had just the same aggression under the boards that I did in the ring. So I got 13.4 rebounds every game and averaged 23 points. So I did pretty good. So I love basketball. And I wanted to go to the game. So I went to the game. I'm sitting there with Ross Foreman. And we're about 20, 25 rows up. And the Jazz is just killing the Rockets. Barkley's out. He's injured. Drexler's hurt. The Jazz is just running roughshod on him. And Malone, by the fourth quarter, he's on the bench because he's got 28 fucking points. And something like that. And at one of the timeouts, or, whatever it was, loose ball or whatever the foul, whatever the deal was, while the team is huddling up, Carl looking up at us. And Brian Russell, who was one of the other players, said, DDP's up there. And Carl's looking right at me, and he makes the diamond cutter sign. And Ross goes, "Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Carl Malone just did the diamond cutter sign to you. Holy shit." Now the timeout's going. He's reaching for his camera. Well, now they're back and they're playing. He's grabbing his camera. I go, "What the fuck you doing?" He goes, "Carl Malone just did the diamond cutter sign, at you. Get him to do it again on the next break." I go, "Dude, I don't even know the fucking guy." He goes, "He knows you." So at the next timeout, he looked up. I pointed at the camera. I made the diamond cutter sign, and then I opened my hands and shrugged my shoulders like, "What do you think?" So he threw it up again, and we got that picture. And he sent us tickets to come backstage after the game. So me, my buddy Big Rick, who's mind-fucked off of this, but he saw, because he's my buddy from back in the bar days. He used to date my sister. I've known this guy now, I've known him since we were 20, He's like two or 3 years younger than me. And he just can't believe it. But then he saw, James Worthy. I was doing something, signing something, and I hear DDP. "Oh, man, you're one of my favorites." And freaking Rick is looking past me, and his jaw drops, and he goes, "Oh, my God, James Worthy knows who you are." So I got a picture with James Worthy wearing the United States belt, bro. James Worthy wearing the belt around his waist. I was the United States champ at the time.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
So now we go backstage, and Barkley sees me, DDP, and he's like Flair's biggest fan ever, but loves everybody in our shit, especially WCW people. He pulls me in, gives me a beer, and him and Warren Moon. Now, if I had a freaking camera back then in YouTube, I filmed this whole thing of Barkley and Warren Moon, busting each other's balls. Who's the better athlete, basketball players or football players? I mean, God, it was priceless. And then I leave there, I go out and I meet Malone, and we just hit it off great. And I said, I know you're a big fan, and you'd love to get in sometime in that ring, probably. If you ever want to check it out, man, give me a call. I'll get you down to power plant. Get some of the guys to move around with you. Have some fun. So that's where we left it. And then he invited me up to the All-Star game when it was looked like it was going to be Jordan's last All-Star game in New York City. That's an unbelievable story. We had a great time up there. And then I heard Rodman was coming in to do the NWO, show again. And I thought, what about? And they weren't in the playoff. They weren't Malone. They weren't even to the finals yet. It was like in the semifinals. Malone was playing. Guys were playing the Lakers, and that next day, Malone would literally own and tool Shaq as they beat the Lakers 4 straight, and the Bulls they were in like game 4 or something, and down 2 games. You didn't even know if they were going to make the finals this year, and I came up with the idea of, what about me and Malone against Rodman and Hogan? So I call Malone up, and I say, how? Oh, he says to me, will you do me a favor? I said, sure, dude. He goes, will you talk to my mom? I go, sure. Now, I don't know, but his mom, Karl Malone never wanted to be a basketball player. Karl Malone wanted to be a wrestler, because him and his 9 brothers and sisters would go with his single mom, who's raising 9 kids, to the wrestling matches every Thursday night. And that was their passion. So when his mom gets on the phone with me, I said, hello, Miss Shirley. Hello, who is this? She went, Louisiana. I said, this is DDP. She goes, no, it is not. I said, yes, it is. I go, this is Diamond Dallas Page. She goes, Junior, this man says he's DDP. That's not true. He goes, oh, yeah, Mom, that's him. No. Oh, God. Oh, my God. DDP. Oh, my God. Oh, Junior, take this phone away from me. She broke down crying. That's
awesome.
what kind of fan. So he goes, what you doing making my mom cry? So over that conversation, we talk about, Rodman. I say, so, what do you think of Dennis Rodman? He goes, a lot of people don't know this, but back when we broke in, he said, you had to go to rookie camp, and you played in the summer league. It wasn't like it was today. He goes, back then, you had to room up with somebody. He goes, Dennis was my roommate. He said he was a good guy. He goes, I don't know this Dennis Rodman wearing the wedding dresses and shit. He said, but that guy, that Dennis I know. And I said, want to wrestle him? And he said, are you serious? I said, I'm going to run down and talk to Bischoff and tell him the idea, but I ain't telling him unless I know you're in. He goes, hell yeah, I'm in. So I went down to Bish, and I ran the idea about him, and I said, what about Hogan and Malone? Hogan and Rodman against me and Malone. He goes, you think he'll do it? I said, I know he'll do it. I said, I just got off the phone with him. And he goes, wow. He goes, and I swear to God he says this. Hogan and Rodman against Malone and Savage. I said, that's not happening. I said, you want it me and him? I said, that's my relationship. Again, it's not about who you know or who knows you. It's about who's willing to say they know you. And I'm not going to do that for anyone. That's a relationship that I have built. That's real. I had talked to him in years, and on Twitter, his wife had just contacted me, and it gave me his number to call him. This is because I've been wanting to talk to him for a long time, but he changed his number so much, just because too many people call him. But I had talked to him in a long time, so I'm really looking forward to calling him. But I'm waiting. My life has been really, really, really crazy hectic. But bottom line is, I said, when you're ready to do me and Malone, you let me know, bro. And I just got up and left. And Bischoff watched the Lakers were playing Game 4 against the Jazz. Now, Bischoff wasn't really a basketball fan, so he didn't really even know who Karl Malone was. He knew who he was, but he didn't know who he was. And he watched Malone. That Game 4, he manhandled Shaq. Manhandled that big man. And he called me up. I'll never forget it. He goes, do you think we can get Malone? I said, absolutely. He goes, make it happen. So we set a contract, or we set a deal. Me and Bish flew out there together to seal the deal. Now he's on break now because you don't know who's going to win Game 4, or should Chicago still. I think they were down one at that time. They'd come back, whatever they'd come back, and I didn't know if they were going to be in the finals together. But we thought, oh my God, can you imagine if that happens? Oh my God, because this was going to happen no matter what. But we didn't know that was going to happen. So that had to all be written in a contract and everything. and his mom came out to get something. And Carl Malone, because he's so big, and his mom's like 6'2". So all his counters are really high. And he had a 25,000 square foot log cabin that was homey, if you can believe that or not. But it was crazy cool. It was like going to, I don't even know how to explain it, like the coolest friggin' bed and breakfast ever. And
nice.
His mom was getting something out of the cabinet, so I came up from behind him. He goes, "Don't you let her fall, Diamond." When she turned around and saw him, I was there. I wanted her. She goes, oh my God, DDP. She gave me a big hug. And, Junior, I'm going to slap you so hard, she said to us walking away. And we signed the deal. We made the contracts. And my one last story about Miss Shirley, we were all getting ready and warmed up before the big show in San Diego. And she walked by with 2 or 3 of her lady friends. And so she walked by me. She goes, Diamond. She goes, you'll notice I'm not so nervous around you anymore. I said, that's how I want it. But, yeah, he was a cool cat, man. He worked his ass off. He went down that power plant with me for, in the middle of his crazy schedule all around. He came and trained with us probably for about those next 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. Whenever he was free, he'd come to Atlanta and hang at my house and train and get the field all around there. I'll never forget the first time. He'd been bumping guys around and learning how to do clotheslines and throw them off the ropes and all this stuff that, is really intimidating. If you've never done it before, it's really hard. And when you're the very best at what you do, to come into someone else's world, that's really hard. And I didn't make him take any bumps in the beginning. But on day 3, I said, okay, dude, now you got to feel what that mat feels like. I said, he goes, what do you mean? I go, you got to take a flat back bump. I don't want anybody to knock you down, clothesline you, nothing. I just want you to hit that mat. He goes, how do I hit it? And I just threw myself on the mat. And then Billy Kidman did, Eric Watts did, Chris Canyon did, boom, boom, boom. I said, your turn. And when he did it, I didn't tell him to tuck his chin, and he knocked the wind out of himself. I go, and he went, and I went, I just want you to know what these guys have been doing for you the last couple of days. And I said, oh, yeah, don't forget to tuck your chin from now on. So he was awesome. Jay Leno, he was a great guy. He worked really hard. Of course, he's not a wrestler by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a solid cat. And David Arquette is his own animal. David Arquette, as much heat as he ever took for him, he, the money he made, is the last story because I've been on with you guys for over an hour now. The money that David made for that pay-per-view where he busted me over the head with a guitar and Jared took the world title. The money he made, which I believe was like $10,000, he gave to Melanie Pillman. Because that was right around that time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some really good stuff coming out of the David Arquette camp there. Now, we were actually at that show, DDP, where David Arquette won the title up in Syracuse, New York.
Yeah. When he pinned Bischoff, not me. And I will go on record saying that was the biggest clusterfuck ever. That never should have happened, but it did. And that being said, that was the booking committee. That was not David Arquette. So, and every fan who's ever roasted him should fucking dip their own ass in boiling oil, because every one of you fuckers who have ever buried David Arquette, if you were put in the same position, you'd have jumped through a hoop of burning oil to do the same shit.
Absolutely.
Oh. Absolutely. So that's why when everybody busts balls, on it, I want to, slap them. Like, really? Like you, Mark? You'd have fucking died for that spot. Mark, you could have died right after that.
Oh, yeah, very well said there. Thanks so much for joining us again. Great storyteller, some really good stories told tonight on our show. We wanted to thank you for that. We wanted to get into some name association like we always do on our program here. And let's go back to when you were growing up, because I know you were a huge fan of pro wrestling growing up as a kid. So tell everybody what federation was your favorite, and maybe we'll do a name association from that, Fatty.
Growing up, there was no other federation to me but the WWF. You got to remember, I'm 57, so I'd see the magazines, but I never really put that together. You know, I don't know why. Because I always saw those guys come to the WWF at some point. You know, Dusty Rhodes came to the WWF. You know, Superstar Billy Graham, he was at WWF. You know, Bruce Sammartino, WWF. You know, the WWF. You know, so, you know, that was, you know, I wanted to be Handsome Jimmy Valiant. I just saw Handsome at a show in North Carolina, and, man, I hugged him for 2 minutes. He knows I love him. He knows that he's the guy who made me want to do this shit. Now, I love Dusty Rhodes. I love Superstar Billy Graham, but it was Handsome Jimmy Valiant, the Valiant Brothers. It was Captain Lou Albano, Cressy Freddie Blassie, but it was Handsome Jimmy who I wanted to be, and that he loves me is fucking huge to me.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy Valiant's a great guy. We had him on our show not too long ago and was one hell of a guest. So let's talk about another guy that is assimilated with WWF and WWF as well as Andre the Giant. Tell everybody what Andre meant to you as a fan.
I think that, you know, that's the phenom. Because if you really ever seen any matches of Andre when he was younger, he could do anything. He was, you know, he was amazing.
Oh, yeah, the original Phenom, certainly one of our favorites. Let's talk about another guy from that era that was really popular and one tough son of a gun, and Blackjack Mulligan.
One of the baddest son of bitches on the planet, man, and believable as hell. I was lucky enough to get to actually know him personally and call him friend. He was one of the trainers down at the power plant, and unbelievable. Unbelievable. Biggest hand on the planet for a guy 6'5" or 6'6". I mean, unbelievable guy.
Yeah, a heck of a character and a heck of a bloodline still in the ring today. Let's talk about another favorite guy on our show, and that's Dick Murdoch.
Another character that I got to spend some time with right in the beginning part of my career. Him and Dick Slater, both of them, were tagging, and they took me on the road with them because they liked me. And Dick Murdoch, oh my God, he was a shoot. That was the real dude. You know, like, he was the kind of guy if you saw in a bar, you might think, I'd kick his ass. And then he'd beat you up and your three friends.
Hey, yeah, there's another guy that you work with backstage at WCW, one of our favorites from back in the day, Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff.
Classy cat, man. Classy cat. I was there tonight. Friggin' this shit went down with Vader, boy. I mean, he was just a tough dude. And no bullshit. The night, I'll share one last story because I got to get the fuck out of here. But when I did La Parka against Savage, which is one of my favorite moments ever in professional wrestling, nobody knew that was coming. There's never been a moment in professional wrestling like that. And if you could tell me one that makes you think of that, where you had no fucking idea. And for people who don't know the story, Bischoff pulls me aside with Sullivan. And he says, okay, they got me in this room. It's me and La Parker and Randy and Sully. He goes, okay, Terry Teller was there too. And he goes, okay, here's the deal. You're going to dress up as La Parker. We're keeping you guys in here the whole time. No one else. No, Terry Teller wasn't there. It was just Sully, me, and that's it. And Sully, me, and Savage, and Bischoff. And he said, we're not telling anyone. So you're going over with a diving cutter. And I was like, Oh, my God. He goes, then you rip off the mask. And friggin' the place is going to go batshit. And it did. When I went out in the back, I'm with La Parker, and he can't speak hardly any English. So I'm mimicking with him. How do I do your walk? How do you play the chair? What do you do here? What do you do here? So he's showing me his shit, and I'm practicing it. So how do I get to Mr. Wonderful? Well, he's the Asian at the time, and he's walking around giving out finishes. And he gets to the door. He knocks on the door. I open the door. I'm in full La Parka gimmick. And La Parka is about 6 foot. I'm 6'4", legit. So Orndorff's a good 6'1". So he knows he's a little taller than La Parka. So he's looking down with his glasses at the sheet. And he looks up, and he looks back down at the sheet, and he goes, "You're going over?" And he looks up at me, and he sees my blue eyes, and he goes, and it's La Parka, all right, that's his name. He goes, "You're not La Parker." And all I did, because you can't see my face or any of my eyes just go like ding, and he realizes it's me, and he goes, "I love it." And he looks, and I do the shh thing, and he goes, "Mum's the word," and he walks away. So he was, as you talk about a guy who drew money, could cut a promo, who had a body, who left it on the line every night, so much so that during his run, the right side or left side of his arm, the nerves died, and that's why the one arm was smaller than the other. But that guy left it in the ring. And he was as good as it got from the look, the rap, the friggin' enthusiasm, the energy, the realism. He was as good as it got, And I think that he's one of those guys that's sort of like, why don't people talk? How is he not in the Hall of Fame? I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame. I just thought of that. Is he in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, Orndorff went in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. All right, that's just okay.
Well deserved.
Of course he's in the Hall of Fame. I just did my own figure. I don't remember Paul being inducted that. I must have missed that year. But, I mean,
that was way back.
Yeah, okay, so that's what it was. Because he should have been way back. But so should Jake Roberts.
Sure.
Absolutely. Totally.
Okay, so should Randy Savage.
Sure.
So
should DDP.
So should DDP.
Well, eventually, it'll happen eventually. Until those two guys get in, you ain't hearing me bitch about anything.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ain't hearing me bitch about anything. Jake Roberts gets in. Friggin' Randy Savage gets in, and I'm sure Randy could have been in. I'm sure that was a little thing while he was alive. So, as Lanny said to me, and I'm sure I can tell this Randy Savage story you'll love since you're Randy big fans. I just don't go to the funerals of the boys. I just it's out of respect more than anything with me. It's something I just haven't really felt right about. And a lot of them I couldn't go to for whatever reasons. So I didn't feel right not going to one but going to another. Just a little fucked up thing in my own head. But I've been there mentally on every one of them, or physically, spiritually on every single one of them. And close up a little bit, choke me up. How the fuck can that guy affect me that much longer? I am burnt the fuck out right now. When Randy died, I called Lanny, and I said, I left him a message. I said, Lanny, I said, it's DDP, dude. I said, I haven't hardly made any of the funerals. I made Bam Bam. I said, I ain't made hardly any of the funerals, dude. I said, but I'm making Randy's. I said, please call me and let me know. So he calls me back and he says, Diggy, he goes, listen, man. He goes, I know you want to be here. And he said, and you are here. He said, Randy loved you and he knows you loved him. And we're just doing this privately. And that's what he wanted. And he goes, what happened? Now, this is Lanny telling this story. He says, Randy's dog, Hercules, died. He goes, not long ago. He said, and Randy has this amazing Seminole tree on his property. And he cremated Hercules, and he wanted to spread the ashes of Hercules on the base of this tree. And I went with him. And as he's spreading the ashes, he says to me, Lanny, when I die, I don't want some big fanfare bullshit. I want to be fucking cremated, and I want to be laid right down here next to Hercules. And Lanny doing his Lanny, that's amazing. But Randy, you want to be lying here down with the ashes of your dog? And he said, if it's good enough for Hercules, it's good enough for me. And I started laughing so fucking hard, knowing Randy and knowing that's, hearing him do this voice. And I said, Lanny, can I tell that story? And he said, oh, absolutely, Diamond. You can tell any story about Randy you want, because I know it comes from the heart. So that's that story, boys, and I'm the fuck out of here. I'm burnt to a crisp. Anybody out there who is has an old lady, a girlfriend, a daughter who has breast cancer, and you want to follow a journey of a really strong and powerful woman, go on Facebook and go to BK's Big Breast Cancer Adventure, and you'll be able to follow that. And I'm just plugging that for people out there who want to see there's more than just chemo. And that's why I'm making this aware. I'm making people aware of this because my girl's going through that right now. And it's something that I think people should, people who want to know. And unfortunately, breast cancer is around all of us. Maybe you want to check that adventure out that she's on right now. And that's all I got for you, boys.
Well, thank you very much for coming back here with us on WGD Weekly. Diamond Dallas Page been with us this week for another fantastic interview. You're welcome back anytime, my friend. We really appreciate you coming on, and we certainly are looking forward to seeing you soon. Check out some DDP yoga firsthand at the Accountability Crib. Thank you again so much, Dallas. You have a great night, and we'll see you again soon.
Hi, this is Rachel Bullman Fernandez, and y'all here with me on WGD Weekly with Steven the Scum. Let's do this thing. Get it on, baby.
All right, all you savages, welcome back. Scum Nation, welcome back to WGD Weekly. Our second interview with DDP was a hit. You guys know it. We know it. It was something special, so thanks for listening. We got a third interview right around the corner, Scum, but what did you think of that first one, man?
Fantastic stuff, Steve. I think that Dallas put it best when he said we caught him on the right night because, he was emotional. He was, really, you could really feel his heart coming out when he talked about some of those things. Obviously, a guy who throughout his career busted ass to get where he was never really the guy that necessarily had that natural talent, had to work for everything that he got in the business and overcame every obstacle that he possibly could. And I think that played out well when he was on the air with us.
Oh, yeah, heck yeah. It comes through, and you know what shines through really well? Not only, actually, in every interview we've done with this man, is his personality. Is just, he's a real human being. At the end of the day, 3-time world champion, well known around the world for not only his wrestling career, but now the DDP yoga. Sit down with him in his office, and he's just a regular guy telling great stories and appreciates fans and appreciates the people that do his, that purchase and exercise with his yoga products. So one hell of a guy all the way around. I thought that interview was really, really cool. What are some of those high spots for you, man?
Well, I think that there's a lot of stuff you can't go through a timeline or the career of Diamond Dallas Page without touching on. But I thought there were a couple of unique spots, Steve, that he talked about. Doesn't seem like many people ever bring up in the interview. When they interviewed Dallas, one thing that we wanted to touch on was that I thought it was a cool part, maybe the most notoriety he ever gained mainstream-wise, was when he worked with all the celebrities somehow that came through WCW. And when he worked with Karl Malone, when he worked with Jay Leno, and then, of course, the debacle that everyone likes to take a cut at, the David Arquette incident that wound up with him becoming WCW World Champion. And I think it was cool to hear Dallas's take on how he met Malone and how he went and even met his mother and how big of a fan that she was, and how it was almost, Bischoff even being friends with him, said, okay, so Hogan and Savage, Hogan on one side, Savage on the other for the Rodman Malone, and Dallas was like, nah, I don't think so, this is my deal. They went with it, and it turned out great. Also an interesting take to hear him, tell all of you out there that have wanted to poke holes in the whole David Arquette thing, don't blame David Arquette, because there ain't a one of you that wouldn't have jumped through a ring of fire to be world champion either.
Yeah, totally. Well, you brought up Randy Savage, and I thought the time he spent talking about him, his friendship, his career, and even his passing was one of the best parts of this interview, per se. Me personally, anyway, talking about having, the love for his dog. He wanted to be buried with his dog. I thought that was pretty cool. Randy Savage, really wealthy guy, and I'm sure he's well known and loved around the world. He's got millions of fans, and at the end of the day, he just wanted to be laid to rest next to his dog. I thought that was, again, I like the human part, the human aspect of some of these guys, and, Just Incredible had mentioned this, and a couple of our listeners had made comments about, some of these guys being put on a pedestal or being idolized for not being good people. But when you come right down to it, DDP is one of the guys that you should probably listen to, and his take on things is really, common sense, white knuckle, just, business-like. So from everything that he talked about, I really enjoyed the Savage stuff and how personable he was there.
Sure. Not to mention that Savage stuff was got to be near and dear to him and his heart. I mean, that was really when he went, combined with the NWO down in the Louisiana when he hit the cutter on Scott Hall and threw Kevin Nash out. That combined with the Savage program was really what made Dallas Page to that next level of superstar. And, telling the story of how Savage, decided he would put him over with the diamond cutter, and then the whole La Parka fix. I mean, those were arguably, when you talk the diamond cutter and he would hit him out of left field, arguably the two biggest cheers that the man ever received, biggest pops, I guess they call it, from a crowd, was that one when all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, that's not La Parka, when he hit the diamond cutter. And then obviously when somebody finally got to the NWO, started his whole People's Champion thing, going out through the crowd, and throwing up the diamond cutter sign. Just, real cool to hear that from his mouth, to tell those stories. That's what we do here on WGD Weekly, relive those great moments with the guys who were there first and foremost. Another thing that was cool, and I'm sure you enjoyed too, Steve, some of the older stuff, his stories from the road with the Fabulous Freebirds, or how his, running the nightclubs and the wrestlers that passed through sort of led to him being hooked up with Pat Patterson to drive the Honky Tonk Man and Greg Valentine in the pink Cadillac at WrestleMania 6.
Yeah, that was really cool. But let's get back to La Parka for a minute. Maybe the funniest moment of the interview, and a great story. I know he's told this story on a couple of different outlets, so we're glad he was able to tell it here, so I know that we have it captured forever. But they're backstage, and he's sitting there dressed as La Parka, and Paul Orndorff, who's a road agent at the time, is going through the finishes. I think he was going to each and every person, letting them know what they were doing on the card that night, and he gets to what he thinks is La Parka, and he looks up at him, and he sees his eyes, and he's like, "You're not La Parker." I thought that was awesome.
Certainly
Mr.
not
Wonderful.
La Parker.
There's a guy I'd love to have on the show, man. Mr. Wonderful. I hope he could still dole out one of those pile drivers.
I'm sure he could do that in his sleep. I thought for a second you meant there's a guy I'd like to have on. It's in La Parker. Be an interesting interview, especially when they had that gimmick where he didn't talk and the voice would pump through the loudspeakers on WCW, and La Parker was like a smooth talking African American.
I totally forgot about that. I was going to say we probably wouldn't have much of a conversation with him considering neither one of us speak Spanish, but you know what we could maybe do is have an air guitar contest with steel chairs.
Absolutely. I'm sure that he would probably, well, you never know. I play a pretty mean chair myself.
I play chair bass.
That's right. One of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, on the Geddy Lee of air chair bass.
Yes, that's right. And you haven't seen anything until the lights dim and the spotlight hits me and I come out with my red Gibson double neck chair for a quick stairway.
Chairway to heaven.
That's right. As it's become known in some circles.
Oh my God, boy! All right, we're gonna keep moving on here. Stephen the Scum, WGD Weekly. We had, like you guys know, we had one hell of an interview with DDP about as personal as you're gonna get. Until he invited us to the accountability crib throughout all of these interviews, and had us over for a round of DDP yoga. And I'll tell you, Scum, I am sold. We did 57 minutes of it. I'm not a workout guy. I felt the burn. It was great, but it was easy on my knees. It was easy on my back. Places on my body from just being older, they start to hurt. You work every day. You come home, your knees and your back hurt. I walked out of there yesterday feeling rejuvenated. It was fantastic. Above and beyond just the whole experience of going to the accountability crib, I actually felt great. So if you're out there, guys, if you're fans of classic wrestling, guys and gals, real fans that grew up watching this, it's simple math says you're in your late 30s or older. You're not getting any younger. If you want to exercise and stay in shape and not have to beat the crap out of yourself, check out DDP Yoga. I know it is a blatant, but you know what? I don't even care because the guy's been on our show and gave us 3 interviews, invited us to his house. So yeah, I'm going to pitch his product. The DDP Yoga is the shit. I tried it myself. Scum tried it too. 57 minutes of it in the man's living room, staring him face to face, telling us how to do his product. And I'll tell you what, man, I'm sold.
Yeah, Steve, it is great. It makes you feel good. It can help you in many avenues, many that I probably don't even know about. Now, again, I try to keep myself in somewhat physical shape, if for nothing better to have some energy and feel good. I've been trying to, a little bit prior to going into the accountability crib, just tried to, get familiar with some of the stuff, the basic, like the diamond dozen, he calls it. And even in that, Steve, I could feel a difference and I could feel better and rejuvenated. So I would agree with you 100%. It was a little more intense with Dallas nose to nose with you, leading you through it, and sometimes there were obviously some spots that I wasn't familiar with, but yeah, you feel better. I mean, the testimonials speak for themselves. I mean, look at some of the different ones that everybody has seen. Look at some as wrestling fans, that look at Jake the Snake Roberts, look at the reformation of him. Look at some of the other guys that you've seen with how far they've come from near death.
Oh, yeah.
To come back. I mean, it speaks for itself, and I don't think you have to sell the product. I think you could just take a peek at it, and it sells itself.
Yeah. Well, he had the opportunity to sell his product last week on Shark Tank. It was actually that night after we were at the accountability crib. They were planning a little party for their debut on the Shark Tank show. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's on ABC, and it's essentially, some very wealthy businessmen making bids on small companies. And DDP brought his company on there and brought out maybe his best testimonial ever in Arthur. Which, guys, if you haven't been on YouTube to hear Arthur's story, go to DDP Yoga on YouTube and check out his story. It's amazing. A ex-military guy really had back and knee problems, and he couldn't even walk without the aid of either crutches or a wheelchair. And now the man's sprinting and just real flexible, really in really good shape now. And we're amazed by his transformation. If you've seen it on YouTube, you guys know what I'm talking about. If not, look it up. It's worth it. It's worth the chance. Look it up. It's worth a look. But we're going to move on from there really quickly. Scum, it was really cool throughout the course of these interviews to be invited to the accountability crib, have it come to fruition, and then we pull up, and, of course we're nervous. I mean, we walk in, we don't know what we're getting into. Obviously, having never done the yoga, all I was worried about. I was like, this guy's going to kick my lily ass. So I was really just kind of worried about getting through the yoga part of it without dying. So that was great. But as we're sitting there, Scum, you had to have gone nuts. I know I was going nuts, but you want to keep it cool because we're in front of not wrestling fans. We're in front of people that are there to get back in shape and stuff. So you want to play it cool, but who walks through the back door as we're standing there? The bad guy. Razor Ramon Scott Hall walks through the back door to join us with DDP. Yogi actually sat down and did the session with us, man.
Another living testimonial. I know you bring up Arthur, the veteran, but I mentioned Jake the Snake Roberts before. Yeah, Scott Hall walks in, and everyone knows he's had the hip replacement, so he's limited. He's taking it slow, but what a thrill. I mean, Steve can vouch for me, and I know a lot of times on air we talk with the guests, and it's easy to say, always as a big fan. And as a fan of the classic wrestling product, that's not stretching the truth.
Well, you got guys you like, and then you got your favorites.
The people that we've had on the program, there's not one of them that I don't respect the hell out of and remember them fondly from their time in the ring. And being a fan, I'm not one of those guys that pulls punches. I have no problem out of appreciation saying that. But Steve, like I was saying, Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, whatever you want to call him, one of my favorite performers, definitely at one point, easily my favorite performer in the business. And he walked through the back door, and again, it's cool. You keep your cool and you deal with these guys professionally. But he was out of his way, even after a hello. What you hear your stories, you hear this or that, and maybe it was the setting we were in. But after we had finished our workout, Scott struck up a conversation with us, was talking some old wrestling. What a thrill. What a great guy. I mean, you could probably tell that might have been who we were hinting at from our introduction today to the program. But, hey, man, I mean, at one point, Steve and him were talking some Dick Murdoch like we always do on the show.
That was awesome.
We got into where we were talking about working punches, and Scott always had one of the most believable right hands. And I was saying, as he was explaining between me and Steve, he was throwing his classic working punch, and it was about an inch from my nose. So I mean, as a fan, to the guy, who coined the phrase, you know why I'm here, or you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. Man, it was a real thrill to be sitting there. I was waiting for him to throw a few and then tuck me under the chin with that discus punch. I would have been happy to sell for him. I mean, no problem whatsoever.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. But, it was cool. He just walked in and I was just out of sheer circumstance, I happened to be the closest guy to the back door. So he walks in and is like, hey, I'm Scott. And the first thing I thought of was exactly that. I was like, man, I know your name, but I don't know why you're here. I figured if I said that, he's either just going to turn right back around and leave and be like, these guys are idiots.
Right. Well, you never know. That was what I was saying to Steve. I wanted to walk up, shake his hand, reach into my pocket, and hand him a toothpick. To which I would have hoped that, no thanks, brother. I got my own, and he could have pulled the one from behind his ear that he always had there.
Yeah, man.
Or possibly hit that when they would call his name for the intro, and he would hit that bounce and the flex into the, where he'd stretch his arm out. Do that bounce up to him, and then instead of the stretch out of the arms, then shake his hand.
Well, his time, just the 10 minutes we got to speak with Scott Hall was great because, like you said, Scum, huge fan of Scott Hall. And, he was talking about, again, if you listen to Austin's podcast, he got into it in much more detail, but I knew he had mentioned working with Dick Murdoch in Japan on Austin's podcast. So obviously I'm going to get a soundbite if I could, a mental soundbite of Scott Hall talking to us personally about working with Dick Murdoch. I think that was cool as hell. And he was talking to me. We were talking about the working punch, and he was looking at me and using Chris as kind of like the dummy for lining up that punch. I thought for sure he was going to come through on one and send you right through that refrigerator.
I would have been happy to take it. Make no mistake about it. Scott is looking good.
Yeah, absolutely.
From what we've seen, and everybody knew, and I told Steve this Dallas. And again, you try to not use a term like mark or something like that. But honestly, I remember watching that ESPN 360 thing on Scott Hall. And it's one of those guys, I'm not one of those guys that's emotionally vested in nearly any of the performers. But I remember watching that in my home, and I was definitely, you could have seen it in me, or if you spoke with me, it was upsetting to me to see a guy who I looked at, in that manner, just dressed down like that. I thought it was horrible. I understand what they're looking for out of that, but to see him come so far, and a lot of people, he's one of those guys. We've had a few of them. We had our Lex Luger, we had Buff Bagwell, and I know we're not interviewing Scott, but just in meeting him, the man, we weren't going to bother the guy. I mean, there were other people there that he works out with, that he knows. He went out of his way to start the conversation with us, was friendly beyond belief, telling stories, laughing with us, took a few pictures and stuff afterwards. When we were going in to talk to Dallas in his office, joking with us about, hey, you guys have the next appointment.
That's right.
And I was
in that classic, like, sarcastic Scott Hall voice. It was perfect.
The guy seems in good spirits. He seems in good health, and I couldn't be happier to hear it. I hope in some capacity, whether it's the Hall of Fame that you hear rumored, whether it's just, maybe with his son's budding career, would love to see Scott Hall in some capacity. I think he deserves to be back in the big show, in the limelight. WWE, whether it's as a commentator, maybe something to do with the network, with the Monday Night Wars show coming up. I mean, who would drop bigger bombs in that era than Scott Hall?
Oh, right. He was the instigator of almost all of it. Whether it was an on-stage instigator, given the information backstage, or some of the stuff he said off the cuff. It was about as shoot as you could be back in the Monday Night War era. So I thought he was great then. I mean, everything he did, Razor Ramon, and even if you remember him before that, in the old AWA days, working with Kurt Hennig, they were a heck of a tag team. And he's, been on record many times talking about how huge of an influence Mr. Perfect was in his career. So Scott Hall looked great. And the key thing there, Scum, as we were talking about, is he walked in the door. Opened the door and walked in, said hello. That hip didn't show itself. And it was, that workout was pretty rigorous. And like we said, we went an hour. And, when you're coming off a big surgery like Scott Hall is, and the other guy that was there, Scum, that we were talked about real quickly, former first-round draft pick, Chris Benson, Major League ball player. He played for the Pirates and, of course, got that big contract with the Mets. I know some of you guys out there maybe in the Pacific Northwest might know who Chris Benson is if you're listening. Either way, he was a heck of a guy too, and he worked out with us and did the workout. And you can tell, when you're rehabbing these grown guys, and let me just tell you, Steve and the Scum, normal size individuals, nothing grand or too tall or too short or whatever, just average size guys. But when you're walking around with 6'4" DDP, 6'6", 6'7" Scott Hall, and Chris Benson, who's a good 6'4", 6'5" himself, and you see these athletes and what they put their bodies through and what they're trying to do to mend themselves, I got a lot of respect for that. And it was really, really cool just to have that opportunity to be over there at the crib and spend our time. And like Scum said, and like we said at the beginning of our show, this whole thing culminated into a 40-plus minute interview about a whole slew of different things. And, of course, it was an important day at the Accountability Crib. We mentioned it earlier with the Shark Tank episode that night. Wasn't a very successful episode for DDP Yoga, but I think that given the information he had on the show, the numbers that he had over his first 2 years of sales, I'm not so sure he needed the Shark Tank, man.
No. And again, I think if nothing else, it gives a little more visibility. It gives a little, in speaking with Dallas, as you'll hear coming up in the next 40 minutes, and we had the opportunity to just sit there off camera with no microphones on and talk to him for another solid hour or so. I think you'll see that it's a man who not only we came to love as a wrestling talent, but good head on those shoulders. I mean, good business sense, good, intelligent man. And I don't see where Dallas Page would want to give away a percentage of his proceeds. And, we'll get in. Right now we'll be set to get into the interview that we had. It's tough to call it an interview as much as it is a conversation with the recorder thrown down on the table, because that's kind of what it basically was with Dallas. It's not going to be like, hey, remember back in 1987 when you broke in with Vern? It's going to be, us sitting there over lunch with Dallas Page, which was a pretty cool experience, and he brought up in the first interview, he brought up in the second interview, like him or not, Dallas, for whatever reason, maybe from reading the internet sites, maybe over the years, things, claims that there's a lot of people maybe that don't like Dallas Page, that aren't going to like him no matter what is done or how good of a person he is. For that matter, the guy we were talking about earlier, Scott Hall, who we had the chance to speak with, maybe one of the people across over the years in the internet boom that gets the he's this or he's that, he doesn't care about the guys, he doesn't this, that. All I can do is when I meet or speak with or make arrangements, and I know Steve feels the same way, some of this talent that we have the chance to talk to, you can only treat people as to how they treat you. Dallas Page has been out of his way, a fantastic guy to us. I admire the guy's work ethic. I admire everything he's done. Scott Hall was out of his way for no reason, no strings attached. He wasn't even a guest. Fantastic and a great guy to us. So there you have it. Whatever take you want to have on it. Couple of good guys. Absolute thrill to meet them. And I think that you'll hear from the upcoming conversation just how open and, regular of a guy when it comes down and the cameras are shut off that Diamond Dallas Page really is.
Yeah. And you make a good point there about Scott Hall, because he had no idea who we are. And even if we could be, draped from head to toe in WGD Weekly clothing, and he may figure it out then, but he just thought we were a couple of dudes standing there waiting to work out. He didn't know we did a radio show podcast. He didn't know anything until the very end.
Absolutely not.
No reason to come and talk to us about pro wrestling. None whatsoever. He initiated just a conversation about the workout and how great you feel afterwards, and we got going. And I think somebody said, you're probably ready to take a bump. And I think that's what keyed him in on the fact that we may be wrestling fans. And then from there on, we started talking wrestling, but it was a very nonchalant thing. And, he could have very well chuckled and got up and been like, hey, guys, have a great day. Nope. Sat right down and shot the shit with us for no good reason other than he felt like it. Anything else to add before we go to part 2 of our DDP interview today, man?
Well, yeah, Steve, if you don't mind, I know usually you lead us into our interviews, and you do a damn good job of it, if I do say so myself. But I think it's only fitting, given the gentleman that we had the opportunity to speak with here the other day, and we were just giving their props to, is if I lead us in here with a little bit of a survey. So here's how it's going to go as we head into the brand new part 2 interview for this show with Diamond Dallas Page, is I was wondering if all you people out there came here to listen to DDP yoga, or did you come here to listen to Steve, the Scum, and WGD? One more for the good guys.
Oh, boy. Hang tight, folks. We'll be back right after this.
This is the total package of Lex Luger, and you are listening to WGD Weekly with Steve and the Scum.
Well, recently, you guys know I was on Shark Tank, and this is actually, we're filming this the day before, actually the night of, where it's going to actually air. So anybody who's listening to this right now, if they just go to ABC and pull up Shark Tank, they can pull up that episode and watch it. So that's what's really great about DVR and, on demand. But that was a lot of fun. I made a decision probably, I guess it was about 2 years ago. I want to be on Shark Tank. And anything I've ever said I want to do, I've done it. And I've done it because I've set a goal. And then I work towards that goal, until I get it. And my business partner, Steve Yu, and I, we sent in our application, but we just missed last year's. So, everything happens for a reason. That's the way I look at it. When it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I don't try to, I've learned from so many things from professional wrestling. I wanted my career to take off in 1994 so bad I thought I was ready. Then 1995 came around. Pro Wrestling Illustrated voted me the most improved wrestler of the year. If you look at the guys who are the most improved wrestler of the year, that's like a shoot award because 90% of those guys become top guys. But I wanted it to happen so bad in 95, and it didn't. In 96, my shit started taking off like a son of a bitch. And then 97, it just blew up insane. When I had my feud with Savage, I was ready. There was no way I was ready in 94 or 95 like I was in 97. So I honestly believe that things happen for a reason. And I get to decide whether it's a positive reason or negative. And I put the application in, and they called me, and they did an interview on the phone. Then we had to do a written, application, which was like 27 pages of handwriting. You couldn't computerize it or any of that stuff. You had to handwrite everything. And then we sent in a videotape, which is our pitch, a rough pitch. And then they came back with another contract, and I actually said no 3 different times. I said, the first time I said, Steve, send him an email back saying thank you, because they wanted us to sign our lives away. I got a business here I've worked my ass off to build up. I'm not just going to give you control of it. I already learned, walk away from the table. I learned that in the WWE. If I walk away from Vince and I don't do the People's Stalker angle, and I go, good stuff, but not for me. You want to do People's Champion versus People's Champion, you call me. I walk out, I wouldn't have made it to the elevator. All they do is walk away from the table, but I just thought, they know what they're doing. And it turned out they did. Because it had to have a storyline that ended with the WWE on top. And that's and what I learned out of that was don't be afraid to walk away from the table. And ever since I've had that attitude, I never sign a contract the first time. I don't care what it is. I don't agree to anything the first time. Let me think about it. I take my time with everything. And with Shark Tank, here we got this opportunity to be on the show. And I said, send him an email saying, thank you so much for the opportunity, but we're going to pass. And Steve looked at me like, we've been working on this for almost 2 years at this point. And he goes, you're going to pass? Do you really want to do that? I said, yes. No one's going to own us, bro. And he called, he sent it in an hour and a half, the producers were calling me. They wanted to change it, and they started, they worked with me. And it took 3 different revisions before I still couldn't say what happened.
Right.
And the big thing was I really wanted to do a reality show because I've had a lot of producers contact me about doing a reality show. And I'm talking about top-end producers. But you can't do a reality show until a year after the date. So actually a year from today, my reality show will, or somewhere in that, I'll guarantee you it will be in the can. It'll be on its way to being shown. Somewhere it'll be happening. And it's it'll be in and around about my family and what I do and this business that we have that's just changing lives on so many different levels. And that's the big picture, because that takes DDP Yoga to the universe and beyond, and now it'll already be on its way to being a household name, but that will make it one. And my cast of characters who are involved in this, my family and my friends and people who I work with, because none of us feel like we're working. Right now we're working on our app, which will change the face of fitness. And what I mean by that is our goal is to become the Netflix of fitness and take it. I love what Vince has done with his channel, and I can't wait to see it. I'm so excited on so many different levels. I love that they didn't do a TV like on network, because they probably would have died there. I mean, if Oprah Winfrey got a problem with a network, she's the queen god of TV. Yeah. If she got a problem, well, the WWE definitely would have a problem. Mainly getting advertisers. Not a problem having content, because they got a ton of awesome content. Yeah. And it's going to all be available on the new WWE network. And every time I show up somewhere for WWE, they pull me in. And what do they want to talk about? Monday Night Wars. Yeah. I'm all over that.
Yeah, there's a program on there. A new program that's
Monday Night Wars. Sure, yeah. And I can't wait to see it. Think about what happened. You guys are pretty young, but you probably remember this because you were young enough to be hip enough to be around it. In the 70s, there was a lot of great music. And then the 80s came along and a lot of really hard rock and roll, which I loved. But somewhere around the 80s, they came up with classic rock. And the Eagles and all those bands that were from that era all got like a whole new push.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they were fresh again because of classic rock. Well, that's what Vince McMahon's going to do with the wrestling fan. I can't believe how many young kids come up to me today. Oh my God, DDP! I said, dude, you never saw me wrestle.
Right.
Sure. But they seen YouTube. And that's the whole thing. Hold on 1 second. Let's see my partners. Stevie, I'm doing an interview. You need me? I'll call you when I get done. Bye. Oh, shit. Gotta tell me I have that interview 2 o'clock. Hold on 1 second, guys.
No problem.
Yeah, I freaking tried to get an agent so bad when I was out. When people want to see, what's your voicemail? Okay. He's out late today. I'll hit you later. I got so many. That's what happens if I don't stay on top of my emails or my texts, I can turn around and I'll have 85 emails. I'll have, like right now I have 11 texts and 15 phone calls. 4 of them were there from before, but there's another 11. But it's going to give a whole new life to the old school legends.
That's awesome.
And the Monday Night Wars, which you guys grew up through. There was no better time in wrestling. I mean, the 80s was really cool with Hulk and Jake and Mr. T and all that stuff. Yeah. That was really cool stuff.
That's what got us to watch wrestling.
Yeah, right. Man. But even before that, Dusty and friggin' superstar Billy Graham was unbelievable.
That was when really we grew up on. But honestly, when it started, wasn't really so interested.
Georgia.
You guys, Nitro, NWO, you,
and the whole WCW, WWF feud. It was.
But a lot of people don't say just because in the end WWE wound up winning. I'll be honest with you. At that point, when I first was watching it again, it was all you guys. WWE.
It was like Sullivan
at that time. It was getting good.
And
there was Brett and Austin was starting to be good, but at that time, before that bubble, I didn't even watch that program anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was just watching.
I had to go back and watch the first Nitro with Luger.
There was a while when I was just watching.
Lex was just here yesterday. Lex comes here and does a very tame version of DDP yoga. And when he first hurt himself, crippled himself, quadriplegic, I was there that day. I had him on my show. It's a great podcast. You guys should check it out.
I think I saw it. Yeah.
Did you saw it? It was just on the air. We just had it.
Oh, it was
I just did it on Wednesday. I had Lex on my show, DDP Radio, which I only host. I have my people because it's really to help my people who need questions and inspiration for DDP yoga.
Sure.
But once in a while, once a month or twice a month, I'll come on and do a show like with Edge. Edge was awesome guest. He freaking big DDP yoga fan.
I was thinking maybe
big time.
Yeah.
We had Jericho on. We've had RVD. A lot of the guys who've done the workout, and really Jericho, nobody puts it over more than Jericho. But having Lex on, and when Lex first, was quadded, he couldn't move anything but his pinky, and came back from that. And when he could start moving, I started teaching him how to do some of the lighter movements to keep the fluid moving and breaking up the scar tissue. And before you know it, and I'm not saying just me, it's everything he was doing, but, he got to walk, and then he lost the canes, and then he lost the other cane, then he was walking, and then he was walking with no canes, and what he told me happened is he got too cocky, and he slipped, and he took a bad fall, and he went right into a fetal position, and Lex I told him that night of the show, you make me look like I can't spell the word positive. Because that's how strong Lex Luger's. He's completely saved by Christ, and whether you believe in that or not, it's whatever his belief is so strong, it keeps him so whole, and he's really awesome. And what happened when he fell, and he just stayed in that chair for a year and a half. And, Scotty came over, Scott Hall and Cody, his son, like, come over to Dally's. We'll combine. Lex like, no, I'm okay. I'm working on it. And finally, I'm like, I come over. I'm like, Lex, come over. We're right there, man. Whatever you need to do. I bought him a special pad and everything, because he has to get down in stages and stuff. In the beginning, couldn't stand. And my partner, Yoga Doc, applied kinesiologist, chiropractor, is amazing. Knows the body as good as anybody. He works on Lex, and then he hits the mat. And in 4 weeks, he's back to standing. He can't walk, but he's back to standing, and he couldn't stand for a year and a half. So, it's that whole cycle of breaking up stuff. But, he was here, we did the show, and we were talking about the network, the WWE network. It's going to be so awesome because, Lex, when I think of the first Nitro, you can't not think about Lex Luger. Because Lex was on the TV sheet in New York, in the WWF. On TV that day. He just didn't show up.
Right.
He showed up at Nitro.
He told us that story. His interview was, we had, a handful of guys, and some very interesting. We had like Paul Ellering and stuff very early in our show's history. But then when we got Lex Luger, that, I'll be honest with you, I think that gave us, and again, we're not a huge show at all, but that was the biggest sense of legitimacy we had, and moving forward for him was...
When you said positive,
that
was the thing. That was the thing with him on there, is when we spoke. I mean, normally you've come out and spoke with us. If it's 40 minutes, an hour, depending on how much time someone has. I mean, he was just laughing, having fun. I can't tell you how many times that shined through just from the stuff that he was talking
genuinely
about.
Nice
he
guy.
just seemed genuinely happy to be talking to
He
fans,
literally changed his life when he found he was as bad. Like, he used to bust Sting's chops all the time because Sting's been saved for years. And he would, that bullshit, blah, blah, blah. I go, Lex. And my attitude was like, believe what you want to believe. Right. I'm a big God person. I thank God for everything. I've been so blessed on so many levels. But you believe what you want. And he would be dead right now if he didn't have that. And then when he went shut down, everybody was like freaking out. He was like, it's okay. It'll be all right. No, the guy just went paralyzed from neck down. The greatest body maybe ever in our profession.
Yeah, he was jacked.
And even when he was at this point, he wasn't on nothing. He was 245, shredded. He looked amazing because I'd seen him right before that. And now he ain't gonna have that body anymore. But it's like, no problem. I mean, he really deals with it on a different level.
Yeah, that's good. To mentally have that freedom is. Because that adds stress and anxiety to your life, and your health goes from
absolutely.
And that was the other thing that jumped out, is he was the first one that said the same thing you said. He was like, Sting, we've been friends forever. And he thought I was an asshole at first, I was, and
it's
I
was.
It's
in his book. There's a passage in his book that's like, Sting thinks I'm a complete asshole.
Yeah, Sting wrote the foreword.
Yeah. It's like the first page of the chapter.
When I first met Lex, here's what I thought.
Because he could be a total jerk, and he would tell you that. Like, one time he was at my house in L.A., he's like, oh, Dallas, I love this kitchen. He goes, did you ever see my... Oh, yeah. I never did have you over, did I? But he busts his own chops, But he's such an awesome, good. I love him, And I'm really happy that, we're in the process of getting a building now, so we'll get out of the house. We don't know when we're going to do it, but I'll probably do it before the app's release because I'll be doing a lot of live workouts from there that no one has. No one's doing live shit.
Like on your phone app.
Like your phone app, as you guys know, because you guys are into computers, the app will replace the DVD.
No.
That's great.
And the DVDs will still go for the next 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
Because some people just want to have like Jericho. I made Jericho is like the biggest supporter ever for DDP yoga, and it's mainly because he was out. His career was over. It was right before WrestleMania. He was out that one WrestleMania, and then they said he was going to be out forever. And I sent him the video of the Arthur Mormon, and he sent me back. He actually called me and said, D, send me whatever he did, and I will do whatever you say. And he did. And in 5 weeks, he was 85% pain-free. And he'd come by my house in L.A. To get a workout. Because we'd never worked out together. He'd just done the DVDs. And I took him over to the park, and we filmed it, and so we're walking over there. So he goes, so what do? Do you do strength builder one day and then diamond cutter the other? He goes, yeah, how do you do this? I go, Chris, I don't even remember what's on those DVDs. Right. I said, I never do the same workout. It's sort of like going out and wrestling if you're really good. And I can only do this with certain guys. You didn't have to even talk about the match. You go out there, we knew what spots we were already going to do because we'd done them so many times that we could talk out there where no one could really see us talking. You know, it's the magic act. And I said, I wish I could do it in the ring as good as I can do it, you know, on the mat.
Right.
He's been doing those workouts for 2 years. In 3 months, he was 100% pain-free, has never been in pain again. He does workouts 4 to 6 times a week. He's addicted to it. He goes, when are you going to come out with some new stuff? So I literally made 2 workouts that I know he loves like the 35, 40-minute workout. So I made like 2 workouts. One's 35 minutes, the other's 40 minutes. I just call them the Jericho workouts. And I said it, so I send it to him in the email, right? So he can put it on his iPad. He goes, no, dude, I'm old school. I need the DVD. That's why I brought this up. Like certain people got to have it in their hands.
No, you're right.
You know, and
I'm just getting to her. You would have to admit, I'm somewhat that way.
Yeah. That's set in your ways.
When it comes to those things.
I'm not afraid to crash a computer just to fix it to see why I broke it again with.
It's funny because Lance Storm is completely the opposite. Lance Storm, because I talk to all these guys on Twitter. We don't get on the phone all the time. Right, and he was talking about the workouts, and I started talking about Jericho. He goes, "Oh God, I'd love to try those." I said, "You want me to send you a DVD? Or you want me to send you the link?" And he's like, "Dude, send me the link." Right.
Most people would.
Well, that app is going to that's a liberating thing because there's people that are on the go, and you can be out of town, you can be in the hotel room,
be anywhere
you got.
And once you have, I think the first one will be the iPad. Then I'll probably go to the Droid and the computer. I might do the computer all at the same time as well, only because I don't want to have to run everything through iTunes. iTunes is a very easy fix, but they also take 33% of every dollar you make.
Yeah, so we have real problems with them for our show, getting them posted in a timely fashion. So I'm not a fan of anything.
Well, I just when it comes to the app, it's all the way whatever their structure is behind the scenes. It's my guy Steve Yu, who's the president of my company, and Cornell graduate, like crazy smart. And he likes that, but it's like, dude, we need to come up with our own interface so that we can, just work it through our own deal. Because we've sold over 70,000 DVDs.
That's awesome.
And I want to be able to, all those people who bought it, I'm going to give them like anywhere from 1 to 3 months. Like, here, you get the app, go try it, see if you like it. Because it's a subscription, in the beginning, the app itself, which will probably have like a 15-minute workout on there, will have a lot of different little, bells and whistles, but that will be free. The other one will be $9.99 a month,
right?
As opposed to paying $89 for the program. But there's always something new. It's not just the workouts.
Well, it gets to change your lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And motivational stuff. And there's a couple secret things I don't tell anybody, because when they see that, because no one's ever done it yet. And this isn't where someone's laughing at me for it. They're going to be laughing when they see it, because it's some funny shit.
Yeah,
and it's engaging. And I actually got the idea from Wade Keller. Something he had said to me years ago. And once I'm ready to roll this out, I'm giving Wade all the credit, because when he said it, I went, bing.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. That's great. We met him at, where did we meet him?
I don't know if we
North Carolina, I think.
Maybe.
Anyway, he's getting busy. We got like
So I'll give you a couple.
Absolutely.
You have 2 more questions.
I thought something good was, like Chris was here at Benson today. Maybe talk about some of the different athletes that have been. You said there was someone from the Jags was there. Talk about what they've worked on and some of the different pro wrestlers too. But I mean everybody included.
Well, you guys are fortunate enough to pick a day, the Chris Benson, Chris Benson, I don't know if you know this, but he was the #1 draft pick at the MLB.
Pirates.
Yeah, number 1. So imagine what that signing bonus was like.
Right, absolutely.
But he's the nicest guy. I met him when he was actually he was living here in Atlanta years ago, and Yoga Doc, another one of my partners. He was working on him and got him doing some of the workout that we were doing, but we were into the dynamic resistance, but I wasn't working with Chris, so I could never really show him that. And Doc wasn't really teaching it like that in the beginning. So he's actually in the book, Yoga for Regular Guys, supporting us, but he didn't really believe it because he didn't really get the whole dynamic resistance thing and engaging the muscles and jacking your heart rate up, standing still. So when he hurt himself, just recently, and we become friends again. He's actually my daughter and him. They go out, so we got a really good relationship, like family now. And I still got to go, Chris. Really, you got to hurt your back, and you're not going to come here and let me help you fix that damn thing. And he's come a couple times, and he texted me today. He's been doing privates with me because he's been hurt, but I knew he knew the modifications, so he could step it back if there was something that was going too hard. That's why I kept asking him, "How's your back? How's your back?" Because he's a world-class athlete, Olympian. He's going to push himself a little farther. So I was really glad that he didn't do that.
I was just thinking on his behalf, maybe this might not have anything to do with it, but just popped in my head. Even though he's a pitcher, might be pretty intimidating when you're dating your daughter. He might be just, maybe that played into it, man.
Yeah, but he was here today. Scott Hall was here today, and Scott, all those workouts I've done with Scott have all been privates. Just yesterday was the first time, and him and Jake were both here in the same class, which was great. And Jake had injured himself doing something. He's still doing DDTs, and he's going to be 59 in May. So
I've seen him do a DDT.
Oh God, I wish I could get him to stop doing it because where's he fall on his hip, and he jet takes him, So Jake does hurt himself. So I got to go back, and now he's doing 40-minute workouts as opposed to hour workouts, and he'll go anywhere between 30 and 40. And Scott just got in with the groups too. So you see, there's always a modification. I'll tell him, lower your knee, don't check your ego, don't step into it. Those guys already know though, so I don't even have to tell them. But when I got guys coming, I had Kyle Love used to play for the Patriots. Now he's playing with the Jaguars, and he's coming off an injury. So he's got a long way to go. I don't know. Here's a guy who can bench 225 35 times.
Fast.
Yeah,
they do that
explosive.
Quick, yeah.
And when he's working out with me in the first 4 minutes, his heart rate's 157. And he's like, whoa, Now, will he really get it? Will he step into it? Like I told him I'd help him. But I'm not going to help anybody who doesn't want to put the work in. Like Lex Luger coming over here, man. He would come here every day, but I just don't have Yoga Doc here every day to help stretch him out as far as the chiropractic. And we have a percussion thing that really vibrates your body at a different level in your joints that helps let that go loose. And Yoga Doc really knows how to use that thing. So, once we've got a really good team of people and a lot of high-end athletes, but my main focus is on regular guys, and women who wouldn't be caught dead doing yoga because there's a lot of them. They tried it and they hate yoga, but they try my stuff because it's engaging and it's inspirational, and I don't make them feel like they can't do it. Then they stick with it. And we've got some amazing testimonies. So that's the real focus is on the everyday people. I would go for I'm looking for a celebrity right now just because people seem for some stupid reason think something's better because a celebrity says so.
Well, it gets the word out.
Yeah, and so, but I'm not paying anybody. I'm not paying anybody to do my workout. I'm not doing that.
You fit that bill, sort of, too.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to have these guys walking helping you out, too. It's great.
And the way I look at it, you got a 3-time world champion training.
Yeah, there you
go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely that's what I mean. But I just thought of when you brought this up, something that I guess it's certainly related to this, but I'm not sure if you knew beforehand, but either way, whether you did or didn't, how gratifying for you was it with all the work you put into Jake to see him on Raw and the Hall of Fame?
You know, we started a movie. I'll leave you guys with this. It'll be a long story, but it'll be the last one. Jake is... I always tell people, without Dusty Rhodes, there is no Diamond Dallas Page, because Dusty gave me every break I've ever had. Believed in me as a character and a guy. But I was lucky I just didn't have one, mentor who was one of the best of all time. I had two. And Jake, there would have been no Diamond Dallas Page in the main event. 3-time world champion. Would never happen without Jake's guidance. And I was just lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And we knew each other before I was ever even in wrestling. And he took me under his wing, and he really helped me, and he guided me, and busted my chops so bad sometimes. But it made me learn. And he would critique my matches. And it really made the world of a difference in what happened in my career. And then when he went down and out, I would help him whenever if he needed it. It took a lot for him to ask me for help, because he didn't, he got a lot of pride. And, at one point I was like, I can only give a fish to somebody so many times. Now I want to say, here's a fishing pole. Now let me show you how to use this thing.
Right.
And that's what I did with DDP Yoga. And he started just the eating plan, like eating better food. And it's just how I talked about it in my program guide. And he lost like 8 pounds. He was 307 pounds when he started.
Wow.
Started our stuff. And it was all in his stomach. All of it.
Yeah, I've seen those pictures.
And he was as broken down as I couldn't even imagine how broken down he was when I got there with Steve Yu to film, because he lost 8 pounds. I said, okay, don't lose any more weight. Stop. We're coming down right away. And I booked 2 flights for Texas. And me and Steve flew into Dallas, and we drove into Gainesville, not knowing what we were going to see. And you guys saw the footage.
Yeah.
I was friggin', oh my God, I've promised this guy I'm going to bring him into my home. Well, why don't we just tell kids who are in the projects that I'm taking you to Disneyland for a week? And then go, change my mind. And after I saw him and how weak he was and how brittle, I was like, oh my God. And I know we're not going to do a workout now. I just want to take him through the Diamond Dozen. So I figure that's easy. He can go through that. After 2 moves, okay, bro, I got to sit down. There are 2 moves. It's raising your arms. There's not a lot of work involved. He really did. He did get the engaging muscles, so it did blow him up very quickly. But he sat down after 2 moves. And I was like, okay, let me make breakfast. So I went and made breakfast, and Steve follows me with the phone, with the camera, right? He's got it right in my face. He goes, so what'd you think? And I'm not pissed. I'm upset with myself for promising something that looks like I'm not going to be able to deliver, but I'm going to have to deliver it anyway. So I said, if I told you right now, I said, I don't want him to hear this. I'll tell you when we get in the car. And basically, if he would have said, if I was being honest, I said, we're fucked. I can't believe you talked me into this. Because he said to me when Jake was first starting the program, he said he'd do it. He goes, man, why don't we wouldn't it be great if he could move to Atlanta? I go, why do you got to move to Atlanta? You can do this anywhere. He goes, he's in a crack-infested environment. He goes, but if he's around us, and Steve's one of the most inspiring cats on the planet. He goes, if he's around us, he'll change everything. Well, I lived with him once, boy. He was out of control then. If we can get him no drugs, no booze, no nothing, he goes, well, of course. I go, all right, let me think about that. And then when he lost 8 pounds, and Jake was like, all of a sudden, boof, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. And then I told him, I said, dude, if you can really do this, I'll move you to Atlanta. Now, I haven't seen him yet. And I tell him, I'll move you to Atlanta. Now I'm there. I'm like, we're fucked. And Jake Roberts has no work ethic to begin with. That's the only guy I know. Because he was so good at what he did. Before Jake's match, they're playing his music. Here's his stretch. Finishes smoking a cigarette, puts it out, grabs a steak, walks to the ring. No friggin' warm up, nothing. So anytime we went to the gym, he'd end up talking to broads. He never worked out. Okay. And 5 minutes later, he's friggin' talking to broads. So I'm thinking, this guy's got no work ethic. I'm so screwed. I got to make a decision here. I'm not going to make it right now. So after we get done eating, he gets up. He goes, okay, let's go. I go where? He goes, work out. He goes, what the fuck you come here for? And I was like, okay. And he did another 2 moves and he sat down. But then he got up again and did another 2 moves. And before you know it, we'd gone through it. And I said, Jake, if you can lose another 15 pounds, I said, I'll move you. Actually, it was another 10 pounds. So it was another 10 pounds in the next month, 6 weeks, let's say. I'll move you to Atlanta. In 4 weeks or 5 weeks, he lost 15 pounds. So now he's 20-some pounds down. I go, stop now. Don't stop eating anymore. Don't eat. Don't try to starve yourself because I want to record it all. Right. I sent Steve down there, filmed him, and then freaking brought him back. The film footage we have, we put a lot of shit up on YouTube, but we didn't put everything up there.
I can only imagine.
We got a lot, and with Scott coming in, and what happened, but going into that and after that, and I mean, all our goal was to allow Jake Roberts to leave this business the way he should leave it. The way, he'll never be all the fanfare that Nate, when WWE, when Nature Boy retired the first time, that was the greatest retirement ever.
Yeah, that was
awesome. Me and Nate have had heat over the years. He's buried me, I've buried him. That's all under the bridge now. Once I saw that and knew that I was a big fan, it reminded me what a big fan I was of Ric Flair. I mean, how can you can't be involved in wrestling and not be a fan of Ric Flair. I don't give a fuck who you are. Right. You can't. And I was one of the guys who was a big fan of him. Sure. But now, as we get to know each other, we're like, we hate each other at that time. Not hate, but it's too strong a word. But we busted each other's chops a lot. And I'm thinking
for the same thing too.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, it was what it was, and I want to fix this. So at one of the signings, as soon as Nate got out of WWE, and he went right on that tour of autograph signs, which he was making stupid money. I just pulled him aside at the first one. I said, Nate, can I talk to you? He said, sure, Diamond. Because we're always nice to each other's face. Right. And I said, listen, man. I said, I know that we've had heat over the years. He goes, oh, Diamond, don't worry about that shit. I go, I'm not worried about it. I want to fix it. And he looked at me. I said, listen, I know I've said some shit. I know you've said some shit. I said, we got off on the wrong foot somewhere. I don't want to feel this way about you. I said, in my 20s, you were freaking one of my heroes, bro. I don't want to dislike you. I said, I'd like to start all over again. I go, I'm Diamond Dallas Page. And he just lit up. He goes, the Nature Boy, give me a big hug. And, and you never know if that's real, but it was. Yeah. Because there's a couple things that happened after that where I turned him on to a producer in Hollywood. And, he called me right back. And that was before he knew, and, now we talk out. I wish I had this relationship I have with him, the whole time.
As an instructor.
Oh, God. One of the greatest minds ever as far as just being able to do what he does. And that's why there's nothing that he can do or anybody can do to him can ever hurt him as far as in the fan site. And, what he's, you can't. He's like the Teflon Don. Yeah. He's like Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg can do whatever he wants. He still stays the man. Yeah. He'll be the man in his 70s, and so will Nate.
Somehow, with everything he's been through, Snoop Dogg's out there with the Muppets now. You know what I mean?
I'll never forget a producer said this to me 10 years ago in Hollywood. He goes, Snoop Dogg, he's Snoopy Dogg now. And this is the guy, old school guy, who did a lot of movies in Hollywood. And when he produced the second Dukes of Hazzard movie. Yeah. This is one of the producers. And Snoop came in being Snoop. And he was being an asshole, because friggin' I want this and I want that and blah, 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 gangster shit. And the freaking guy pulled him over. He started talking to him. He goes, you hired Snoop Dogg Now, if you're hiring, and then he figured out whatever his real name is,
Right.
Anthony Vargas, or whatever the hell his name is, he freaking said, he goes, oh, that's a whole different animal. Because he's a businessman. So he's just playing the character.
Sure.
Like all those rappers get that the ones that are really successful, that wrestling. You're not that really that person, but you are. It's part of one of your
it's your
personas.
Persona. Yeah. That's funny. A good analogy.
It is a good and a great analogy. Yeah, definitely.
So, boys, the bottom line is you can tell your people to, I always say this, and this is important. This gets on this show. Don't listen to a word I say. Anybody who's listening to this, don't listen to a thing that I say about my own program. Go to Twitter. Go to @RealDDP, @DDP Yoga. Read what people write every hour. There is someone new talking about how they either changed their lives or lost 60 pounds or they don't have any more back pain. Or go to Facebook. DDPYOGA, one word. Read what people write. I get choked up on some of that stuff, and I answer every single person. I put a comment, unless it's a stupid thing, and sometimes I haven't really had to delete any either. But of course, some asshole will come on and do that now. But if someone puts an educated or respectful, comment, and I think the biggest reason why, because wrestling fans can be brutal sometimes, really brutal. And there's people who just hate Diamond Dallas Page. They will, they always did, and that's cool. I don't really care because I get that. But those same people have found a way not to come on and fuck with what I'm doing. Right. And which is a respect thing, and I gotta only think that it's because of Arthur. It has nothing to do with me. Right. It has to do with Arthur and Jake and Scott. Because it's really tough to break my balls when I took two of the biggest icons of all time, and I did none of the work. And I tell everybody that. They put all the work in. I was the guide, the way Jake guided me in my wrestling career, and Scott Hall did too. I created that whole gimmick from A to Z, which was the Diamond Stud, which literally was everything that Razor Ramon became.
Absolutely.
Everything. Yeah. And then Scotty took the Diamond Cutter from me when nobody touched the NWO. When I put that black and white shirt on, finally in New Orleans in front of 33,000 people, and hugged Kevin, and Scott came by and tapped me on the ass, and we fucking shook hands, and he went to pull away, and I pulled him back and went bang, and the whole building erupted, and Kevin came at me, and I backdropped over the top rope, and I took off through the crowd. No one saw that coming, but no one told Scott Hall, oh yeah, Diamond's gonna drop you tonight. No one would, he had to have, it was my idea, but he had to agree to it, because I knew that no one had touched that. And that was on the TV, on the sheets, like written down, 8 weeks in a row, and pulled off. On the 9th week, it wasn't even on the sheet. I was getting ready to leave. 10th week, it was on the sheet, and it happened. And it was the rocket that took my career, because I already had the Diamond Cutter over. The fans were with it big time. Sure. And if you look at, there's a great video, and kid works for me right here now today. But this kid at 14 years old made this video, 15 years old, made this video called Diamond Cutters on Everyone. It's on YouTube. You can watch the crowd, little pop, little bigger, big pop, bigger pop, huge pop. I hit the move, and you'll see the whole side of the building jump to their feet. The Diamond Cutter sign. Go back and look at who I hit them. Yeah. I didn't hit Sting or Flair or Hogan. Every guy was an enhancement guy or bottom guy in the company. Yeah. Every single guy. Now you take that back to reaction, because I made them look like I did the Ric Flair formula. If there was someone who could work, Ric Flair, best in the world, world champion, would go out there and have a hell of a match with Joey Max. Basically, Joey was an enhancement guy, but he could work, and Flair loved him. So Flair would go out there and bounce all over for Joey. They'd get so mad at him, but he's Ric Flair. He can do whatever the fuck he wants. And he make you. So I used that psychology with all the guys I worked with. I'd get my shit in, then I'd have them get their shit in, and bing, bang, boom, looks like, oh my God, he's got Diamond Dallas Page. Oh, Diamond Cutter.
Yeah. That's a great way to work that move into the matches on a comeback.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think that's a great place for a Diamond Cutter.
Yeah,
Turned out to be probably between yours and Austin's version of it. It's maybe the most famous move in all of wrestling.
No question. You got to give Randy too. Randy's got it. Randy's changed it up. You know, and Randy's he's got it over on his own.
Yeah,
but his biggest pops. Oh, when he catches that out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That one, or that one that you were saying when we had interviewed you last time when you were under the mask.
Oh, that was the best.
That one.
And who took it was legendary.
Right.
Because there'll never be anybody more legendary than Macho.
The Hall one and that one are two of the biggest blasts of a crowd when you hit that.
Well, when I hit Savage that first time,
too,
but it was just me and him, but La Parker, when they saw La Parker hit it, they went crazy. And Scott Hall was involved with that too. He'd been down there fucking with Larry Zbyszko. And he come running back like, whoa.
After you told us that story when you were on the last time, I went and looked that one up, and man, they go nuts.
People go crazy.
Because obviously once you hit it, they know, all right, that's
the funniest part of that story is Orndorff.
Yeah.
Well, you're not La Parka.
He didn't say La Parka, which is a La Parker. Not La Parker.
All right, welcome back. Well, if you're a DDP fan this week, Scum, you are definitely all jacked up after listening to about 3 straight hours of the King of Bada Bing himself.
Yeah, one could say that if you are a Dallas Page fan, that you may have just felt the bang, so to speak.
I'll tell you what, I felt the bang. That guy kicked my ass. That was a great workout, and I am jacked up to buy that disc. I'm definitely going to get it. You know, my wife, she does P90X yoga. I'm going to take her off of that. We're going to go do DDP yoga together and get all flexible.
That's right. Get all flexible in case you ever need to squirm out of a submission hold.
Yes, because I want to squirm out of a submission hold with my beautiful blonde wife. That's exactly why I want to be flexible.
And then to float over and make her tap out.
Oh, you know that's right. Yeah. I'm giving the word Boston Crab a whole new meaning.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with a crab or one of those back/leg submission holds. Always goes over well with the fairer sex. Personally, you know me, Steve. I'm always a big fan of that straight right to the back of the skull, but
yeah, or just an out and outright power bomb.
You know, I always say that you gonna learn something new here every week on WGD Weekly, and you know, as we get ready to wrap up our special episode with 2 Dallas Page interviews, I guess this week you learn a little bedroom etiquette from Steven the Scum, as the Scum let you in on a little secret that's worked magical numbers over the year. That full handful of hair and the straight right to the back of the skull, people. You can never go wrong with that one.
Yeah. While smoking a cigarette or not, your choice.
Yeah, preferably the old two flicks and a swat.
All right. Well, we had a hell of a week off last week heading to the accountability crib, and that all culminated into a really, really cool and unique interview, 2-parter from Diamond Dallas Page this week. Next week is a surprise, not because it's some huge name, or it may be, it may not be. We're just not telling you who it is. We will have a show next week. We took last week off as kind of a little bit of a season break, and of course we had to come down to the lovely city of Atlanta, GA, down to Bad Street, USA, and take a left, go down about 2 more blocks down to DDP's house, the accountability crib, and do a little bit of yoga with him that last week, so we didn't have a show. Well, I don't think in the very near future, Scum, we're going to be missing another week. We got a full season ahead, many more guests to come. I know we talked about a few things, and we have, maybe, and depending on when you watch wrestling, maybe the biggest name ever when you talk classic professional wrestling. And now I'm not talking rockin' wrestling, and I'm not talking Mid-Atlantic 4 Horsemen. I'm talking one of the greatest legends of the ring of all time is scheduled to be on Steven the Scum here in the very, very near future. Anybody else you want to talk about that may or may not be on our show, Scum?
Well, Steve, we have a great lineup coming up, as always. A lot of irons in the fire, as we say. Coming at you soon will be one of the greatest tag teams of all time and the first ever two-person WGD Weekly program. That'll be coming at you shortly here, heading into the spring, into the months of March and April. We'll have Ricky and Robert from the Rock and Roll Express coming on. And the man that you spoke of, Steve, we're proud to announce confirmation that also heading in the spring, maybe, like Steve had mentioned, one of the greatest champions of all time. No, maybe about that. Maybe the greatest champion of all time. As 7-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Harley Race will be coming to WGD Weekly. I know you're excited about that, Steve, and you know I am as well. And we just can't wait to bring him in and just pick his brain, go through the timeline with Harley Race, Steve.
Yeah, that is incredible, incredible stuff. So many guests this season on WGD Weekly, so stay tuned to us. If this interview is a little bit too long, you can always hit that subscribe button, come back and watch it at your leisure. We're on iTunes, and we're going to be on Wrestling Inc. Radio very, very soon. They're about ready to pull the plug or pull the trigger on that. Huge, huge deal there. And one thing, Scum, before we go, and I wanted to tip my hat to a man that got me involved into wrestling's glory days on Facebook, and a guy that I am going to miss greatly. One of our lead admins from the page, Matt Pender, down in New Zealand, has hung up the boots, so to speak. He has retired from our page. He has a lot going on. He has a budding musical career. And guys, if you haven't listened to his band, Bikini Roulette, get out there and get a copy of their EP. They got a really good song called She Cut Me Loose. 3 or 4 other really good tracks on that EP. So good luck to Matt Pender in your music career, buddy. I know you're going to make it. You got a great voice and your band kicks ass. And everything that you ever did on our page was immediate gold. So thank you so much for all that you did for WGD. It was great having you on our page. We want you to come back and do a guest spot here and there when you can. And Scum, going to miss a really, really good guy on our page.
Sure, as he was affectionately known on the airwaves at one point, our international correspondent / I know he was demoted down to intercontinental, but that was only in storyline, or as some of the quote-unquote insiders like to call it, keeping kayfabe. But I personally, I'll miss Maddie. I've become friends with him since being on the page. He's been a big supporter of the show. Like you said, he always did a fantastic job. Always good for a few laughs, back and forth when I would be speaking with him. I can only hope that, much like other retirements in professional wrestling, that one of two things happens. Either he gets that itch again and all of a sudden we see Mr. Pender back in full force on Wrestling's Glory Days, or hey man, if he's interested, I know a guy I could certainly have a nice mask sewn for him if he'd like to make a return. And also, I know I had briefly spoken to him about it. The whole thing could be a work, Steve, because, much like back in the day, Hollywood Hogan, maybe Matt Pender's going to reappear on Glory Days here shortly and announce his candidacy for the office of president.
Yeah, I can't put it past him, because the excuse that he gave for leaving was pretty weak. He said he wanted to open up a head-licking stand in New Zealand.
Yeah, and we all know that's been done before.
Yeah, come on, you're killing it.
But if it is, if the rumors are true and Pender is going to show up on the Tonight Show and announce his candidacy anytime soon, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, if you want to come back for that big match at the Georgia Dome, pretty sure that you can knock me over with a finger poke, buddy, for a 3 count. So, we can all spray paint our big foe at the end if you'd like to come back. So either way, Matt, you'll be greatly missed. We'll be in touch. And again, that door, obviously the door would be open, being that it's your door to open and shut to begin with. So, come on back whenever. We'll be waiting for you, Hollywood.
You got it, brother. Matt Pender, we're going to miss you, buddy. We wish you all the best. You and Penny down under. Enjoy your lives stress-free from all the great debate on Wrestling's Glory Days. Either way, we're out of time this week. We're going to be back next week with another special guest right here at WGD Weekly. Scum, we're out of time. Anything to add before we roll out?
Well, just one more thing in the vein of... we had heard a lot from Dallas Page tonight. We talked about briefly having the chance to meet Scott Hall, so I think it would only be appropriate if we reminded all of our listeners on the way out the door that not only is WGD Weekly always too sweet, but everybody knows that when you're running with Steve and when you're running with the Scum, DDP and the bad guy, you're running for life, baby.